I had been buried for 7 days, but suddenly I opened my eyes to find a group of fox spirits bowing before me, pleading for their lives. I sat bolt upright from within the coffin that had grown deathly cold days ago. Why had I returned to the land of the living? My mind raced at lightning speed, and I spoke without a moment's hesitation. The king of hell has poor eyesight and grabbed the wrong soul, so he has sent me back. In truth, I had borrowed this body to return to the mortal realm. In my previous life, I cultivated for 100 years only to fail at the final demonic tribulation. I was forced to toil in the underworld for 50 years just to earn a single chance at reincarnation. But this body is too weak, its life force is nearly exhausted, and the yang fire is flickering out. If I do not find a source of yang energy before daybreak, I shall surely perish. I hurriedly lamented my plight. Great fox spirit, I beg you to save me. Lend me a sliver of your life fire in this moment of crisis. If the sunlight touches me before I recover, I will be finished. Without life fire, you are but a ghost. This concerns one's longevity, and as we are of different species, how could I possibly lend it to you? Then consider it a loan. I shall offer my life fire as collateral. No, that is not right. You lend me the fire, and I shall provide the currency. What if I trade this treasure for a portion of your fire? This coin has traveled through both the yin and yang realms and carries a profound karmic connection. The old fox knew quality when he saw it. His eyes darted around as he sensed a stroke of fate, and he surreptitiously leaned in to accept the coin. Very well, saving a life is more meritorious than building a 7-story pagoda. A stream of life fire descended upon my crown, and my body instantly grew warm. Though I was still frail, I could at least draw breath once more. I immediately pressed my advantage. Once I have fully recovered, I shall certainly prepare a feast of chickens to honor you. Although the old fox was still slightly suspicious after receiving the payment, upon hearing the mention of chicken, his demeanor softened. It is easy enough to discuss, but this single stream of fire is of little use. You have no method to sustain it. When the time comes, you will still meet your end. Does that not mean all my efforts will have been in vain? That was the very response I had been waiting for. Since I must rely on him for the resurrection technique, I immediately began acting like his devoted junior. But do I not still have you, Great One? Since you are already a benevolent soul, please see this through to the end and instruct me. You have certainly asked the right fox. Only I am kind-hearted enough to help. I shall teach you the secret of the life-extending bow, but once you are saved, do not forget my feast of chickens. This is a secret art of the Taoist sect. To think that a mere wild fox would possess such knowledge. Though I harbored deep suspicions, I offered him sweet words. I am grateful for the immortal fox's teachings. Never mind chickens, I would offer anything to serve you. Dawn is approaching. Tomorrow night, I shall perform an exorcism to purge your impurities. Follow me first. The old fox glanced at the sky. I bowed respectfully to express my gratitude while secretly performing mental calculations in my mind. This old fox may be greedy, but he does not take lives. Following him truly offers a chance at survival. He led me to a dilapidated temple by the roadside that was as ruinous as a latrine. You rest here for now. I will go and sprinkle some urine around the perimeter to establish a barrier. Under no circumstances should you venture outside during the day, nor should you consume anything indiscriminately. I was drenched in a cold sweat, barely able to stand, let alone having any appetite. Fearing that my death might ruin his karmic connections, the old fox asked in a rush, "Do you have any money left? I can grant you a bit more life force." It is truly all gone. I struggled to sit in a cross-legged position, locking my yang energy deep within my body. Please attend to your own affairs, elder. I have my own means to hold on until tomorrow night. Seeing that I would not perish immediately, the old fox turned, pulled a tattered blanket from the corner, and covered me with it. Only then did he hurry back to his cave. Has he had his head twisted off and his blood drained by the Jiangshi? Who are you trying to scare? That is someone sent back from the underworld. I have lent him my life force. Do not disturb him. This is disastrous, truly disastrous. What if he dies? He promised that if he succeeds, he will give us 10 roasted chickens as an offering. Then there is no problem. What a truly benevolent man. 10 chickens will be enough for us to feast until after the new year. Your minds are filled only with food. Quickly, go and prepare the ritual supplies. Go and borrow the new oil lamp from the Chi family. 7 bowls, a portion of each of the 5 grains, and a bundle of incense. Remember, it must be purchased with currency. If any of you dare to steal or compromise my cultivation, you shall end up like that fool who was bitten to death by a dog. Do not blame me for being heartless. The pack of foxes scattered, and the old fox whistled, summoning a sparrow that had gained sentience, ordering it to watch the skies for any signs of movement. Meanwhile, taking advantage of the solitude, I assumed the resurrection posture, pressing my palms against the soles of my feet, struggling to preserve my final breath. Having been reborn into this life, I absolutely cannot die such an unjust death. In this desolate wilderness, there dwells an immortal fox. This proves that spiritual energy exists here, but this body is far too feeble. It will be impossible to recover in under 3 years. Relying solely on one's own arduous cultivation is far too slow. I must find a protector. Although this motley old man before me is greedy, his nature is not inherently wicked. He is a person who can be molded, so I might as well subdue him. Following the customs of the shaman sect, I shall establish a base and recruit a few wild spirits to do my bidding. Time drifted by in anticipation, and in the blink of an eye, dusk had arrived. The borrowed life flame was on the verge of extinguishing. I was so famished that my vision blurred, and my stomach churned as if something were twisting within it. Fortunately, the foxes were swift and efficient, dragging back an old oil-filled lamp and a broken bowl. The old fox transformed into an elderly woman. With a wave of her hand, 7 bowls filled to the brim with rice appeared before me. Seeing the state of my impending demise, the old fox grew flustered. "Little one, do not lose consciousness yet. This matter must be performed by you personally. I am not dead yet. As long as there is breath left, I shall endure. Later, I will support you as you pay homage to the Northern Dipper and the 7 stars. I will recite a line and you shall repeat it. This ritual must succeed. This is a gamble for one's life against the celestial star deities. There is no room for the slightest error." Night descended, and inside the desolate temple, the lights flickered weakly. The old fox ordered the small foxes to clear away the weeds so the starlight could shine through. The 7-star array was prepared, and the incense had been lit. I caught the scent of raw rice, and my hungry stomach rumbled so loudly that I nearly reached out to grab a handful and swallow it raw. This is the lingering ghost nature that has yet to be purged. The insatiable gluttony remains. The old fox looked up at the sky, thick with dark clouds, and gritted his teeth. Even if the stars are not visible, we must still pay our respects. Can clouds truly obscure the light of the stars? He supported me as I stood. His mouth emitted shrill, eerie sounds, piercing like the wailing of a newborn infant. This disciple, with a sincere heart, respectfully pays homage to the Northern Dipper, praying for the protection of one's destiny and the bestowal of 10 to 800 merits. I lowered my head and followed. As I bowed, a ghostly wind rose from all directions, and countless shadows surged toward the desolate temple like a tidal wave. The air was filled with the wretched sounds of ghosts weeping and wolves howling. "Get out, this body belongs to me. I am Li Yunxiao. Return this body to me." This was the backlash from borrowing a corpse to return the soul. Wandering ghosts and wild spirits within a radius of dozens of miles caught the scent of the living, all desperate to seize this chance at rebirth. The old fox's expression changed drastically. Clearly, he had not expected the disturbance to be of such magnitude. Yet, once the "Stop now, or none of you shall leave here alive." He remained obstinate, continuing his chanting, desperate to suppress the unfolding situation. The incense stick in the corner burned with unnatural speed. In the blink of an eye, it turned charred black, as if something had drained its very essence. The small fox, acting as the guardian, let out a wretched cry. Its 4 limbs convulsed, and it collapsed to the ground, falling deathly still. Immediately after, the 2 candles at the temple entrance flickered out, and a wave of yin energy surged inward, manifesting as a hanging ghost standing half a zhang tall, shrouded in deathly mist. The moment it stepped into the temple, the air in all directions froze. The hanging ghost's face was deathly pale. A coarse rope still knotted around its neck, its soulless eyes fixed intently upon me and the old fox, who was in the midst of his ritual. The next instant, a phantom noose materialized and struck toward the old fox's throat, but the creature's reflexes were sharp. With a quick swipe, he evaded the blow. Abruptly, he shifted his focus, abandoning the prayers to the Northern Dipper and turning directly toward me. I sat cross-legged, 3 bowls of incense rice before me, as motionless as a divine statue. This strange maneuver by the old fox funneled a vast surge of life force directly into me. In that moment, my mind rang with a deafening hum as I felt a connection to the Nuwa Palace, the very temple where I worshipped in my previous life. Though I failed in my cultivation path in that past life, after my death, my physical remains were gilded and worshipped, absorbing 50 years of incense offerings. Now, through the interdimensional connection granted by the 7 stars of the Northern Dipper, the divine power stored within that gilded statue transcended the boundary of yin and yang to protect my fragile, broken body. Golden light erupted, illuminating the desolate temple as if it were broad daylight. Struck by this pure, righteous golden radiance, the hanging ghost shrieked and recoiled into the darkness. I dared not lose my focus, seizing this fleeting opportunity to recite the final incantation in one breath. Great Saint of the 7 primal lords of the Northern Dipper, grant the power to resolve the 3 calamities, transcend all tribulations, and escape the cycle of suffering. In a flash, the dark clouds dispersed, the 7 stars hung high, the ritual reached completion, the yin energy vanished, and my life force was restored. A familiar warmth radiated throughout my body, and my stiffened blood vessels began to pulse with life once more. My heart began to thud, each beat growing stronger and more rhythmic. Truly, this sound was the most magnificent symphony in the world. Seeing that its plans were ruined, the hanging ghost outside the temple glared at me with malice before dissolving into a shadow and vanishing. Yet I knew that a deep-seated enmity had been forged this day. I opened my eyes to see the old fox collapsed upon the floor. He had risked his own life to preserve mine. 50 years of cultivation had been nearly depleted. He could no longer even maintain his human form, forcing him to reveal his true essence. Several other foxes gathered around, baring their fangs at me, clearly holding me responsible for their elder's collapse. Do not be hasty. I have a solution. I held the bristling foxes back, channeling the spiritual power I had just harnessed. With a single flick of my finger, a ray of golden light struck the center of the old fox's brow. This golden light contained the profound spiritual power and divine incense energy I had cultivated in my past life, a gift of the highest caliber. A patch of orange fur immediately bloomed at the center of the old fox's brow. Not only was his lost cultivation fully restored, but through this misfortune he had secured a rare blessing. My Taoist cultivation surged by 80 years. The old fox spirit suddenly awakened. At first it was dazed, but it soon began to dance and spin wildly, letting out strange shrill cries. The 3 other foxes joined in, running frantically throughout the temple. A moment later, the old fox transformed back into a small elderly woman, straightened her robes and bowed respectfully before me. This humble fox thanks the great immortal for this enlightenment. Because he had just received my spiritual power, the Lingji mushroom had opened yet another layer of potential. Knowing my background, do not call me great immortal. I have merely awakened the memories of a past life. You saved my life. This small repayment is only proper. That is right, I have yet to ask for your name. What need is there for a name? Everyone simply calls me Ban. These little ones are named Yiden, Urshuo, and Santu. These names are far too casual. In the future, I shall bestow proper names upon all of you. For now, consider the matter of the chickens a debt. I have a pressing matter to ask of you. Upon hearing there was a serious matter at hand, Ban immediately became alert, kicked the lame fox that was eavesdropping nearby, and led the pack in a respectful salute. He leaned in close and lowered his voice. The original owner of this body was the son of a scholar. His family possessed 100 acres of fertile land, but he suddenly went mad several days ago, and after sleeping for 7 days he passed away. Afterward, a Taoist priest arrived and insisted that the coffin be buried in the graveyard. The spirits in the graveyard say that at midnight, that priest would return to open the coffin, look inside, and then depart. Immortal Master, that priest is surely suspicious. My heart sank. That voice from earlier, which cursed me as an extraterrestrial demon, was likely the soul of the original owner. It appears the original owner was the victim of a soul-severing technique. That old Taoist is in all probability the mastermind. If this threat is not resolved, he will surely come knocking at my door sooner or later. However, I have just returned to the land of the living and am so weak I can barely walk. I must find a place to recuperate. I will return home first, then decide upon my next move. The sky is brightening. The familiar sunlight cast its warmth upon me. Though I am so weak that I could collapse at any moment, the simple sensation of being alive is truly wonderful. The old woman prepared a bowl of wild vegetable porridge for me. Though I could barely swallow a few mouthfuls without feeling wretchedly nauseous, it finally brought a sliver of warmth to my body. After resting for a moment, the old woman helped me make my way back to the Lee estate. As the villagers passed by and caught sight of me, each looked as though they had encountered a specter. They screamed and scattered in every direction. Inside the Lee residence, the situation had descended into absolute chaos. A servant came tumbling and stumbling into the courtyard. Master, something terrible has happened. The young master has crawled out from his grave. You scoundrel, how dare you spout such nonsense at a time like this? Master, the young master has returned to claim his life. Master Lee and his wife exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of shock and fury, wondering who would dare to curse the Lee family with such a plight. Madame Lee gripped her husband's arm, her eyes rimmed with red. What if it is truly him? The two supported each other as they rushed outside, only to find me standing at the gate. Master Lee pointed a trembling finger at me, his eyes rolling back as he nearly collapsed on the spot. What kind of demon are you? Why do you desecrate the corpse of my son? The old woman quickly stepped in front of me, her voice ringing out clearly to the gathering villagers. Fellow villagers, listen to me and let justice be served. This morning, while I was tending to the fields, I passed by the graveyard, and my legs nearly gave out from terror. I intended to flee immediately, but you will never guess what I found. She paused deliberately, baiting the curiosity of the onlookers. Someone nearby could wait no longer and shouted, "Old woman, speak quickly!" The old woman chuckled, then continued in a measured tone. It turns out this young Master Lee was crying out to the heavens. I heard a human voice, and since it was broad daylight, I knew no spirit would dare to manifest. I stepped closer and indeed found a coffin. Saving a life is more virtuous than building a 7-story pagoda, so I pried it open to see who was calling for help. I lifted the lid, and it was none other than the Lee family's young master. Her words left the surrounding villagers stunned. Yet, as I scanned the faces of those villagers, it was clear they wished to seize their hoes and bludgeon this monster who had crawled back from the grave. Master Lee trembled uncontrollably. The words died in his throat, but Madame Lee suddenly lunged forward. She pushed aside the hair at the nape of my neck, studied the black mole intently, and burst into uncontrollable sobs. Look at this mole, this is the flesh. Only then did Master Lee dare to approach. Torn between joy and sorrow, he cried out, "My son, you have truly returned to the living." The young master is merely suffering from shock and has yet to regain his senses. Quickly, summon a physician to examine him. The fox spirits, scorched by the masculine energy radiating from the crowd, could no longer conceal their forms and fled, moving faster than hares. Master Lee did not bother to pursue the old woman. He hurriedly ordered his servants to set off a string of firecrackers to ward off evil spirits. He then produced a bagua mirror, a sacred tool for house protection, and shone it over everyone present. Seeing that the mirror revealed no demons or malevolent apparitions, he finally let out a sigh of relief. He had the carriage ready to bring in Physician Lin, the local quack, who arrived with his legs trembling like a sieve. Days ago, it was he who declared that my heart had stopped and that I was undoubtedly dead. His hands shook as he took my pulse, his expression shifting rapidly. Though faint as a silken thread, it was indeed the pulse of a living man. It appears the young master was merely feigning death through breath control. He is starving now. Quickly, provide him with some rice water and ensure he consumes nothing greasy or fishy. As long as you can save my only son, I shall heed your every command. I lay upon the bed, feigning ignorance, though my mind was sharp and clear. This physician may be a quack, but his advice on convalescence was sound. For the next 3 days, I subsisted on rice water to sustain my life while gaining a preliminary understanding of this world. This is the 3rd year of the Great Ning dynasty. History has veered in a vastly different direction since the fall of the Qin. The dynasties have all changed, and while the 100 schools of thought remain, this is no longer the world I once knew. The master of this body is named Li Yun. He is 16 years old and a prodigy who attained the rank of scholar. Born into a wealthy family, he was considered the pride of a landed household. Most importantly, my cheap father, having failed the Underworld's examinations his entire life, pinned all his hopes upon me. He even chose the name Yun for me. He hoped that through literary fortune and the favor of the Tao, I would eventually attain the rank of Jinshi. Yet, the more I ponder it, the more I realize something is amiss. The original owner of this body was healthy, yet he suddenly went mad and died. Immediately after his death, a Taoist priest appeared. He refused payment and insisted that Master Li bury me in the mass grave, claiming it was for the sake of feng shui. According to the inquiries I made, on the night I was buried, that Taoist secretly returned to the mass grave to pry open my coffin and inspect the corpse. It is clear that they were attempting to seize my soul. That Taoist is certainly no man of virtue. He intended to use my physical vessel to refine malevolent arts or perhaps to harvest my soul for his own purposes. Fortunately, I have borrowed this body to return from the dead. Otherwise, the Li family line would have surely been extinguished. Just as I was calculating how to deal with that Taoist, a plump, fair-skinned scholar burst through the door. "Big brother, you have finally returned to the living. I have missed you dearly." I stared at Lady Li, bewildered, while the chubby fellow pounded his thighs in a display of dramatic grief. "It is I, Tong Tong, Lu Tong Tong. We have been fellow disciples for 10 years. If you forget me, who will let me copy their work during the examinations?" The corner of my mouth twitched. "Very well, so you are nothing more than a wealthy second-generation heir who refuses to study?" Seeing that I remained silent, Lu Tong Tong mysteriously pulled a gourd from his sleeve. "Big brother, this is a 30-year-old ginseng root I stole from my father. Take it to nourish your body. This chubby fellow is actually quite decent." He wiped his nose, leaned in close, and lowered his voice. "Big brother, have you truly walked through the gates of the underworld? What does the afterlife look like? Are the ghosts terrifying?" I looked into his small eyes, filled with a thirst for knowledge, and deliberately lowered my voice. "In truth, ghosts are just like people. They reflect whatever you carry within yourself." Madame Li, standing nearby, could no longer endure it. "Amitabha, hush your mouth. Do not speak such nonsense." I winked at Lu Tongtong. "I am simply bored to death. I am only joking with my sworn brother to pass the time." "Madam, when young men talk, it is quite embarrassing for a lady to be listening nearby." Madame Li finally stepped outside and let out a long sigh. Since recovering his soul, this child has not only forgotten certain events but also maintains a thick barrier between himself and this family. Certain habits and details simply do not align. If it were not for the birthmarks on his body and the scars from his childhood falls matching perfectly, I would truly believe he had been replaced by someone else. That empty coffin, the master of the house inspected it personally. It was indeed empty. Everything fits together piece by piece. Yet that Taoist priest has vanished as if he evaporated from this world. No matter how we search, he cannot be found. Madame Li, feeling uneasy, went to the temple to offer thanks once more. She requested another consecrated talisman to tuck under my pillow, fearful that I might be some form of demon or malevolent spirit possessing the body of her precious son. Inside the room, Lu Tongtong lay sprawled by the bed, his chin resting on his hands, his eyes sparkling as he stared at me. "Big brother, hurry and tell me, what is the underworld actually like?" "We shall speak of the underworld at a later time." "Tongtong, let me ask you, do you believe there are immortals in this world?" "Of course I do. Even the great sage Confucius believed in spirits and deities. The imperial court performs sacrifices every year. I firmly believe immortals exist. They are simply too far beyond our reach." "Then why do you think I was able to return from the brink of death?" Lu Tongtong's eyes immediately widened like bronze bells and his breathing grew rapid. "Big brother, you mean to say," I smiled, projecting an air of unfathomable mystery. "An immortal stroked my crown, braided my hair, and bestowed upon me the gift of longevity. Though this chubby lad appears foolish, his face is round with a full forehead and a well-defined jaw. His countenance is brimming with the aura of nobility and wealth. He is indeed the most suitable candidate to be taken in as a subordinate. Cultivation prioritizes 4 elements: wealth, companions, techniques, and land. I am currently empty-handed, and it is fortuitous that the original owner of this body was quite obedient, so just a little enlightenment is enough to make him completely devoted to me." As expected, upon hearing these words, Lu Tongtong was so terrified that his soul nearly left his body. He collapsed to his knees and kowtowed 3 times. "Master, please accept this disciple's respects. He is truly too easy to deceive. He did not harbor the slightest suspicion." I could not help but laugh and sigh, asking, "Little brother, do I look like a cultivator now?" "Indeed, your temperament has changed completely. You look exactly like an immortal from a painting. Since you have such sincerity, I shall bestow upon you a fortuitous encounter. Tomorrow night, prepare 10 roasted chickens in your courtyard, then retire to your bedroom. Regardless of what sounds you hear, you must not peek. If you keep a dog, you must chain it up. If the chickens are gone by tomorrow, then this matter is a success." Lu Tongtong was left bewildered. Can 10 roasted chickens really be exchanged for an immortal connection so easily? No wine or meat, only roasted chicken? Do not ask about other matters and do not trifle with this. If you were to prepare wine, those foxes would reveal their true forms after drinking. Wouldn't that frighten your entire household to death? Although suspicious, Lu Tongtong obediently committed the instructions to memory. To solidify the resolve of this fatty, I recounted tales of the retribution that awaits in the underworld. He was drenched in cold sweat, vowing to follow me in cultivation to escape the sea of suffering. Before departing, I decided to demonstrate my power to leave him thoroughly awestruck. I feigned a profound demeanor, saying, "If you do not believe me, I shall tell you one thing for you to verify. On your way home, you will find a sum of money, exactly enough to purchase those 10 chickens. However, this money is life-saving coin for the poor. You must wait at the spot for half an hour to return it to the rightful owner. This is what we call accumulating hidden merit." The fatty nodded vigorously, his face filled with excitement. "Rest assured, big brother, I am not lacking in such a small amount of money." After sending Lu Tongtong away, I feigned exhaustion and lay down to rest. As soon as Lu Tongtong stepped out the door, he bumped into Madame Li, who had been eavesdropping out. "Aunt, I should return now so that my fellow students know that our big brother is safe." Lady Li felt a bit awkward and politely replied, "That ginseng root is too precious. You should take it back with you." "Aunt, are you looking down on the bond I share with my big brother? I will leave this ginseng root here." Lady Li sighed and walked this earnest child to the door. Lu Tongtong climbed onto the back of the simple-minded servant Erju, who was already waiting, and shouted, "Let us go." He carried little Fatty steadily on his back. "Tell me, can a person who has died come back to life?" "Impossible," Erzu answered decisively. "Then what if they were to return to life by chance? Then they were never dead to begin with." Lu Tongtong slapped his thigh in frustration. "Talking to a blockhead like you is useless." "I do not understand." "Forget it." "Wait, stop." Erju stopped and set him down. Lu Tongtong picked up a blue cloth money pouch lying by the roadside and opened it to find only copper coins and silver scraps inside. Heavenly, truly divine. He carefully counted them, finding just enough money to purchase 10 chickens. Er smiled foolishly. "Young master is truly blessed. Finding money on the road is only natural. Your young master has been guided by a supreme expert. We shall wait here. Whoever lost this money must be worried to death." The two waited by the roadside for a while, and sure enough, they saw an old woman leading a mud-covered child, walking along the road with a devastated expression, searching. Lu Tongtong whistled and held up the money pouch. "Is this yours?" Upon seeing it, the old woman dropped to her knees with a thud and began kowtowing. "Kind-hearted young master. That is the life-saving money the child's father earned through hard labor. If it had been lost, the two of us would have had no choice but to hang ourselves. Grandmother, please do not bow to me. Have the child bow to me instead, and that will suffice." The old woman thanked him profusely, pulling her grandson to kowtow to Lu Tongtong. Without hesitation, Lu Tongtong told Erju to take out a string of copper coins and give it to the child. The old woman wanted to kowtow in gratitude again, repeatedly calling him a living bodhisattva. Lu Tongtong climbed onto Erju's back and waved goodbye, leaving the old woman and the child behind as they continued to express their gratitude. "Erzu, tell me, am I a good person?" "The young master is, of course, a good person. I am a man of virtue." Lu Tongtong laughed aloud, but a storm of shock and disbelief surged within his heart. Brother Li has truly encountered a celestial being. He could even divine exactly who lost their money. This is certainly no mortal trick. He is clearly a man of extraordinary capabilities. With such prowess, even if he is not an immortal, he is undoubtedly a person of profound skill. Upon returning home, Lu Tongtong immediately went to the kitchen to find Mother Zhao. "Mother Zhao, go buy 10 chickens, slaughter them all, and roast them for us to eat." Mother Zhao was startled, but since this little demon king had already commanded it, who would dare disobey? Who would dare to defy him? After a chaos, the 10 old hens were already in the pot. While Lu Tongtong was busy there, I was not idle either. Through that sparrow spirit, I kept a constant watch over the movements of the fox pack. Seduced by a handful of grain, this sparrow had become my eyes and ears. The fox pack was preparing for their feast this evening. "Grandmother, surely that scholar would not deceive us?" The foxes muttered to one another as they placed human skulls upon their heads, transforming into human forms. Edan transformed into a pot-bellied ghost boy. Ershi became a bald, lecherous-looking rake. Santu was a hunched, cowering old man. The old fox looked upon this misshapen lot with disdain, then led them to a nearby underground spring to wash, before applying a specially prepared ointment to begrudgingly mask their stench. At the hour of the rat, in the dead of night, a ghostly wind began to rise. Following my instructions, Lu Tongtong hid in his room, not daring to breathe aloud as rustling sounds echoed in the courtyard. "There are 4 of us. How should we divide the 10 chickens? You take one, and I shall take one." Consumed by curiosity, Lu Tongtong could not resist peeking through the window crack. One glance nearly sent his soul fleeing from his body. Beneath the moonlight, 4 figures were ravenously tearing into roasted chickens, their eyes glowing with a sinister green light, while furry tails protruded from behind them. The old woman, who was the transformed old fox, seemed to sense his gaze, and her head twisted a full 180 degrees with unnatural rigidity. Those green eyes stared directly at Lu Tongtong through the crack in the window. Terror turned Lu Tongtong's legs to jelly. He scrambled toward his bed on all fours, whispering, "Eat the chickens, but please do not eat me." In the courtyard, the foxes wiped the grease from their mouths and began packing the remaining chickens to take back for the little ones. The crippled fox chewed thoughtfully and lamented, "Being a human is truly difficult. It would be better to follow a gui and sell one's body at the brothel in town. They say that one can earn wealth simply by lying down, while also practicing the art of absorbing yin to nourish yang. Feeding off others, such base and wretched tactics will inevitably lead to an early grave. We follow Master Shu now, that is the true path." The foxes, scolded into silence, dared not utter a sound. They gorged themselves and stuffed the remaining chickens into their mouths, only leaving once they were fully satisfied. When dawn broke, Lu Tongtong, having held his bladder all night, finally mustered the courage to open the door and step outside. He found the courtyard in complete disarray. The table was stained with grease and covered in footprints, while stray fox fur lay scattered across the ground. It was clear that this was no scene of human feasting. Although there were many folk legends regarding spirits and demons, this was the first time he had truly encountered such creatures. Fear gripped Lu Tongtong's heart, yet it was outweighed by a growing sense of excitement. If demons truly existed, then the immortals Brother Li spoke of must also be real. Even if he hadn't met an immortal last night, the fox spirits who devoured the chickens were undeniable proof. Furthermore, Brother Li has the power to command fox spirits. Is that not a display of formidable prowess? The servants of the Lu household were in a sorry state, especially Nanny Zhao. Having heard the commotion in the courtyard at midnight, she was frightened out of her wits. The next morning, she trembled as she advised Lu Tongtong, "Young master, those things are unclean. Do not invite them into the house again. Nanny Zhao, keep what happened last night to yourself. Speak of it to no one, and I shall reward you with 200 coins later." The 4 fox demons returned to their den, satisfied to share the remaining chicken bones with their young. At daybreak, the sparrow spirit flew to the old leaning tree and puffed out its chest, shrieking, "Come out and receive the decree." Old Foxban, having learned his lesson, hurried out to greet the messenger. "Exalted master, what is your command?" The sparrow spirit finished its message and added, "Present yourselves at the Shu residence tonight. The exalted immortal shall bestow names upon you all." The exalted immortal also orders you to investigate the monks and Taoists in this region and determine who among them possesses genuine ability. Upon hearing they were to be granted names, Ban was so overjoyed he could hardly keep his mouth shut. With official names, we shall finally be recognized as part of the formal ranks. I lay in bed sipping the meat porridge brought by Xiaohong, deep in thought. My yin is currently excessive while my yang is insufficient. My soul is too powerful for my frail mortal body, and I must nourish myself properly. A physician would never dare prescribe such potent medicine, but I certainly do. I instructed them to slice the ginseng root gifted by Lu Tongtong. I hold a slice under my tongue each day, letting my saliva slowly dissolve it. Combined with meat porridge and lamb broth taken in small frequent meals, my body is recovering far more rapidly. Xiaohong stared at my tonic prescription in astonishment. "Young master, since when have you mastered the medical arts?" I offered no explanation. After finishing my porridge, I stepped into the courtyard and scattered a handful of grain, bribing the sparrow spirit to continue acting as my eyes and ears. I then returned to my room to retrieve the scriptures that the original soul had studied, determined to analyze the language and ideologies of this world. Not long after, Xiaohong pushed the door open. Young Master Lu has arrived." I set the book aside and gestured for him to enter. As soon as I spoke, Lu Tongtong slid toward the bedside, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Big brother, your younger brother truly found money yesterday." I offered a faint smile and signaled Xiaohong to close the door and depart. Lu Tongtong immediately leaned in, lowering his voice. "Big brother, those chickens we ate last night, were they fox immortals?" "Indeed, I summoned them myself. I intend to introduce you to them, for that is the immortal fate I spoke of." Lu Tongtong was overcome with both excitement and trepidation. "Big brother, I fear demons. What is there to fear? Do you truly believe I would bring harm upon you?" I looked directly into his eyes. "In this life, I am destined to ascend, yet the path is fraught with calamities. I require a guardian for my Tao. Are you willing?" Upon hearing this, Lu Tongtong immediately raised his hand in an oath. "I am willing. Lu Tongtong shall follow you for the rest of my days. Wherever your blade points, I shall strike." I sighed inwardly. This foolish boy is far too simple-minded. Assuming a solemn expression, I said, "Since you are willing, I shall bestow upon you true power. I have divined that a tribulation approaches, and I must rely on your strength. I intend for you to establish a Fox Immortal Hall and invite that clan of foxes to share your dwelling. I plan to transmit to him the mystical arts of the Jiamen sect so he could act as a medium for the Fox Immortals. Though this practice carries a minor toll on one's vitality, I would establish strict rules to prevent the foxes from possessing him at will, thereby minimizing the side effects. This technique will allow you to wield the power of the Fox Immortals without the need for traditional cultivation, though it will require a sacrifice of some spiritual energy. Are you still willing? No need to cultivate to gain power, and I might even lose weight? This is an incredible bargain. Big brother, please teach me at once. Damn it all, his brain is truly beyond salvation. I proceeded to impart the secret chants and the arrangement of the shrine, teaching him the meticulous rules of the altar in great detail. Return home and find a quiet room to set up the altar for the sect's patriarchs and the spirit tablets of those Fox Immortals. On the 1st and 15th of every lunar month, you must offer them sacrifices of chicken and fish. Do not open this room under normal circumstances, and permit no others to enter, only you may cross its threshold. I offered these careful instructions, knowing that these foxes would not feast upon his household without providing something in return. Since they are well informed, you can use them for business, but a portion of the earnings must be set aside for charitable deeds to accumulate merit. This is for accumulating your own virtue as well as the virtue of these fox spirits. Among these 7 foxes, only one is compatible with your horoscope, but that one alone is capable of managing the other 3. Foxes do not merely require sustenance, they must also be civilized. When you have time, recite basic primers to them. Upon hearing that he had to teach, Lu Tongtong's face fell. Big brother, I barely know how to read myself. I put on a stern expression, fearing that if he failed to guide them, they would never develop human intelligence. If their animal instincts were to surge one day and they devoured your entire family, what would you do? You must treat them as if they were your own children. Only through patience and guidance will they be willing to lay down their lives for you. Furthermore, when feeding them, you must do so with your own hands so that they become accustomed to your scent. Additionally, you must speak to them frequently so they grow familiar with the sound of your voice. Having arranged everything, I invited Lu Tongtong and Erju for a vegetarian meal. In the afternoon, I returned to my room to rest. Drifting into a hazy sleep, I was once again plagued by a nightmare. In the dream, eerie winds howled and the windows rattled incessantly. I rose to close the window, but upon turning back, I saw someone hanging from the rafters. It was my maid, Xiao Hong. Xiao Hong's hair was disheveled, her tongue hung long from her mouth, and her wide staring eyes were fixed upon me. A cold sweat broke out over my body. Ever since I achieved the minor heavenly cycle, I have no longer felt the chill of the seasons. This dream is certainly an omen. I immediately took out my copper coins to cast a divination, rolling them 6 times to obtain the hexagram. Pure yin with 1 yang is a sign of great misfortune. It was my own yang energy that allowed me to regain my senses. Those yin spirits are naturally filthy entities seeking to reach my doorstep. That hanging spirit has not only found me but has also brought accomplices. I let out a cold laugh. They dare to target me? I immediately summoned Xiao Hong and requested a lock of her hair and her birth horoscope. Xiao Hong's face flushed with deep embarrassment. She suspected I had lecherous intentions, yet she followed my instructions nonetheless. I wrapped the hair in paper, drew a talisman, and recited an incantation. Following this, I ordered Lu Tongtong to purchase a live hen that was at least 3 years old. Without a word, Lu Tongtong left and returned with a speckled hen weighing 6 or 7 jin. I tucked the talisman into the chicken's gullet and handed it to Xiao Hong. For these next few days, tie this to your headboard. Your life is at stake, so you must do exactly as I say. Xiao Hong turned pale with terror, nodding her head repeatedly. I checked on my parents and the servants in the estate. Though they were all touched by some malevolent aura, fortunately, there was no sign of imminent death. It seems that malicious spirit prefers to bully the weak. Having decided to protect Xiao Hong first, I instructed Lu Tongtong and her to help clear out the courtyard. I performed a simple feng shui ritual and finally burned a talisman at the doorway to ward off evil. Once these tasks were completed, I could not help but wonder how this entity managed to enter the estate. A household with a residing guardian deity cannot be breached unless an insider acts as a guide. I considered the soul of the original owner. If it was the original owner who led the hanging ghost inside, then it all made sense, and this matter had to be resolved. If the original owner's soul gathers enough power to become a guardian corpse demon, or even a corpse fiend, then this body of mine will not be mine for much longer. After thinking it over, the best course of action is to refine the original owner into my own life-bound divine general, much like Celestial Master Sa subjugated Wang Lingua. A mutually beneficial arrangement, far better than letting him descend into a malevolent spirit. The next day, I had the servants clean the entire estate, adjusting the feng shui layout to gather life force. At dinner, as I wished to have chicken porridge for nourishment, Father Li took the opportunity to open a bottle of wine, even coaxing Lu Tongtong to join him. This fatty, Lu Tongtong, is quite skilled at winning people over. He managed to make Father Li roar with laughter, drinking 7 or 8 cups himself while conveniently dispelling Father Li's final suspicions regarding my cultivation. After dinner, my parents retired to their chambers, instructing us to get some rest as well. With the 2 elders gone, I sat in the front courtyard with the fatty. I sat upon a chair while the fatty stood beneath the moonlight. I had already dismissed Xiao Hong and the other wet nurses. The servants retreated as if granted a pardon, leaving only the fatty and me in the hall. Under the candlelight, the fatty's eyes glowed like 2 large lanterns. I lectured him for half an incense stick of time on cultivation methods, and he listened so intently, scratching his hands and cheeks, that he looked as if he wanted to ascend to immortality immediately. Suddenly, a rhythmic knocking sounded at the door. I performed a quick calculation with my fingers before heading over to open it. The guest has arrived. Above my head, a bird chirped. It was the sparrow spirit that enjoys eavesdropping. While this creature lacks any real strength, it is a talented gatherer of intelligence and incredibly gluttonous. Since it craved the fox's chicken stew last night, it must have come tonight hoping for a free meal. Lu Tong opened the door to reveal an old woman dressed in black, leading a doll with a massive head, a man from the pharmacy counter, and a hunchbacked old man. Seeing me seated on the chair, they immediately crossed the distance in a few strides. The entire Fox clan pays respects to the immortal master. Rise, I have summoned you here tonight for 2 reasons. First, to bestow upon you names, and second, to impart cultivation techniques. We are deeply moved, master. Hearing this, the 4 foxes were overcome with such excitement that they kowtowed repeatedly, especially the elder fox, whose face was streaked with tears. After so many years, they had finally been granted recognition. I offered a few words of comfort and some words of wisdom, as if mere flattery could turn these foxes into true sages. The disciples have grown accustomed to this elderly appearance. It is convenient for performing tasks. Very well. From this day forward, you shall be known as Hu Yidan, and you Hu Dutu. The second will be named Hu Butong, and the third Hu Delu. Since you follow me, you must walk the path of righteousness. Cease all underhanded and treacherous deeds. Understood. Now we proceed to the transmission of techniques. I inquired about the lineage of the Hu Jin clan, and as expected, their path was wild and chaotic. I did not mince words in criticizing their miscellaneous manual, declaring it not worth a single spirit stone. Instead, I bestowed upon them an orthodox path of the immortals. I instructed them on how to establish shrines and accumulate merit. Then I turned to Hu Jin. Are you willing to serve as a guardian spirit for Huizhua, that we may cultivate together? I am willing, master. I am willing. Hu Jin nodded repeatedly. This was a golden opportunity to attach himself to a powerful benefactor. With a solemn vow sworn before me, the man and the fox formed a spiritual pact. I pulled Hu Jin aside and whispered, that hanged ghost is currently hiding among your kin. Investigate its origins for me. I intend to ambush it. Hu Jin started to speak, but I waved my hand to signal his silence. I commanded them to depart through the door. Once the foxes had left, I instructed Lu Tong Tong to use the soot from the bottom of the pot to draw a boundary at the back door, accompanied by a binding incantation. Now the outcome was sealed. Should that spirit attempt to escape, it would find no path. At this moment, the sparrow spirit perched on my head chirped anxiously. What about me? What about me? From now on, you shall be named Zhan Ying. Follow me, and once you have mastered human speech, I shall officially accept you as my disciple. Upon hearing it had been granted such an imposing name, the sparrow spirit fluttered away, puffed up with pride. The night deepened, approaching the hour of the rat. The temperature in the courtyard plummeted, chilling winds blew from all directions, and a layer of white frost gathered upon the grass. I curled up under my blanket and let out a cold laugh. This evil spirit had quite the cooling effect. It would be perfect for the summer. A ghostly wind swirled through the room, seemingly searching for a target. Suddenly a cat let out a wail, a miserable, shrill sound, followed by the noise of something shattering like glass. During the day I had arranged a simple geomantic array. To a spirit, flowing energy acts like a river. Blocking its path creates an obstruction. When energy is condensed and solidified, it functions like a mountain. These mountains and rivers combine to form a complex labyrinth. That malevolent spirit is now trapped within my ghost-binding wall. The strange noises outside the room have ceased, leaving a deathly silence. Yet I know this is merely the calm before the storm. Suddenly, a faint flickering whisper echoes in my ear. Where are you? I am almost upon you. The voice is gravelly and chilling. Heavy footsteps approach, each strike thumping against my very heart. This is a classic psychological assault, intended to break my spirit. That will not happen. I look up at the landscape painting hanging over the door. It was a gift given to my grandfather when he served as an 8th rank official. Having already sketched the formation, I added a Mount Tai talisman. Does it think it can force this mountain into my room? At the head of my bed, I have used 7 knotted grass rope to weave a defensive barrier. As long as I do not open the door, this spirit could tear the roof down and still never enter. Creak, the sound of the door being pushed echoes, yet it does not budge an inch. Creak, creak, the spirit cannot force the door open. Through the door crack, it stares inside, exhaling a plume of yin energy from its mouth. In an instant, the air congeals into frost, but its gaze finds nothing. Is he not inside? Then I shall look elsewhere. Such are the deceptive lies of a demon. I am not foolish enough to open the door to investigate. True to my intuition, after a moment the shadow returns silently. Seeing that there is truly no movement, it finally departs. It turns toward the adjacent quarters, the residence of the maids and elderly servants, truly a fitting place to bully the weak. The elderly servants are snoring like thunder, so the spirit, too lazy to bother with them, heads straight for Xiaohong's room. At this moment, Xiaohong is curled up under her blanket, trembling with fear as she hears the old hen by her bedside clucking restlessly. Recalling my warning, she grips the edge of her blanket, not daring to stir. Suddenly, the old hen stops its clucking. Xiaohong feels in terror that the hen is no longer struggling but dangling from a rope suspended from the rafters. In the eyes of the hanging ghost, Xiaohong is already frightened out of her wits. It is the perfect moment to strike. From the rafters, a blood-stained noose descends. Xiaohong appeared to be under a spell. Having lost all self-control, she stood up and walked step by step toward the rope. As the rope tightened around her neck, Xiaohong struggled desperately, her legs kicking frantically. The Guibazhu looked upon this scene with great satisfaction, yet it found it strange. Why was the girl's resentment so faint? It cast a disdainful glance at her and chose not to finish the kill. It turned to leave, intending to wait until tomorrow when the Shu family was in chaos to harvest souls at its leisure. However, just as it attempted to depart, it discovered it could not pass through the boundary. The yin howled throughout the courtyard, yet it could not find an exit. The entire courtyard had become like an iron barrel, sealing it tightly within. Not until the rooster crowed to announce the dawn and the sky grew bright did the evil spirit panic and scramble into the well to hide. The following morning, Master Shu surveyed the messy courtyard, his expression dark and gloomy. I rinsed my mouth and asked casually, "Why has Xiaohong not come?" The servant girl stammered in response. "Xiaohong has fallen ill. She has a high fever and is delirious, claiming that last night her chicken was hung to death from the rafters." Deep down, I understood that the old hen had taken the blow in Xiaohong's place. I stepped out of the room to see Mr. Shu comforting the servants, saying, "It was merely the wind blowing the tiles away. It is nothing of concern, hurry and clean it up." Lu Tongtong approached with dark circles under his eyes, his expression full of trepidation. I turned to speak to Master Shu. "Father, while we are repairing the house, should we not conduct a thorough cleansing? We must not only purge the malevolent energy but also conduct a ceremony to invite good fortune." "My child, I was actually planning to arrange a marriage for you." "Father, there is no need to rush. Having returned from the brink of death and with the cause of my illness still unclear, I cannot help but feel someone is trying to harm me." I stared directly into my parents' eyes. "While I was ill, did any strangers visit?" How could there be any strangers? Do not let your imagination run wild. Tong Tong, you should return first, set up your practice, and begin your cultivation journey as soon as possible. Lu Tong Tong nodded and took his leave. The Li family manor began a massive sweeping renovation. I seized the opportunity to observe the feng shui layout of the residence. The overall arrangement was symmetrical and orderly, with clear distinctions between the main and secondary structures, featuring green bricks and black tiles. Regarding the fundamentals of feng shui, there were no significant issues. After all, the Li family patriarch had been a shrewd businessman in his time, eventually purchasing an 8th-rank official title. To be able to reside in such a grand estate, one must have surely employed professional architects to design and construct it. Yet, the flow of feng shui had stagnated, the family fortune withered, leaving only a single heir for 3 generations. The untimely and inexplicable death of the original Li Yun is the most damning proof of this. I commanded the servants to relocate the furniture, clear the clutter, and utilize the 9 palaces method to reconfigure the layout, altering the flow of qi within the residence. This great purification purged the estate of countless relics, even discarded a broken bowl that I deemed unnecessary. Proper residential feng shui emphasizes cleanliness, with ample light and ventilation to harmonize with the spirit of the inhabitants. I proceeded to arrange a spirit-gathering formation, focusing the vital energy, and selected the chamber in the northwest, the Qian Palace, as my sleeping quarters. The Qian Palace belongs to the Yang element, which is perfect for my recovery, and allows me to draw upon the surrounding essence for my cultivation. The cleaning continued until the 3rd quarter of noon, when the peak of Yang gave birth to Yin. A chill wind suddenly rose from the ground. The old maid, while drawing water, was caught in the breeze and sneezed. With her Yang energy momentarily weakened, her vision blurred, and she shrieked that there was a ghost, a corpse, inside the well. Her grip loosened, and the wooden bucket plummeted back into the well. Old Master Li scoffed, claiming that in broad daylight there could be no such specters. I stepped forward to pat the maid on the shoulder, offering comfort, then instructed someone to lower a bronze mirror into the well. The water was crystal clear, showing only a few golden carp floating belly up. The maid breathed a sigh of relief, muttering, "I saw wrong, I must have seen wrong." She continued to mutter to herself that she had made a mistake, but in my eyes that hanged ghost was hiding at the bottom of the well, forcing those fish to feign death. Having been trapped within the estate by me, the ghost had panicked and fled blindly into the well. This well sits at the can position, a place where yin gathers, making it perfect for setting a formation. I promptly went to Master Li's study, snatched a bronze paperweight, and proceeded to Madame Li's prayer room to take a purification vase from the hands of the Guanyin statue. I placed the bronze fish at the mouth of the well to gather evil spirits, using the vase to neutralize the malevolent energy. The bronze fish suppressed the yin-killing aura of the hanged ghost, transmuting it into vital energy, which in turn fueled the feng shui formation. In an instant, the ghostly winds dissipated and the entire residence felt bright and expansive, the air now the faint, warm scent of blossoming flowers. Although Master Li did not understand feng shui, he sensed the shift and probed cautiously, "My child, where did you learn such skills?" After this grave illness, I suddenly experienced an awakening, I said, dismissing the question with a casual excuse. Master Li did not press further, merely instructing me to study diligently and prepare for the imperial examinations next year. I nodded in agreement. Achieving fame and prestige is, after all, a vital part of my plan. As dusk fell, I finished my meat porridge and began to read my books. The hanged ghost at the bottom of the well refused to remain silent. A rope, sodden and heavy, emerged from the well like a snake, but the bronze fish flashed with a golden radiance, transforming into a large, brilliant red carp. With a single flick of its tail, the fish sent the rope spiraling back into the depths. The hanged ghost, refusing to submit, unleashed its killing intent in retaliation, but only served to further activate the feng shui formation. The roof tile above it transformed into a towering, majestic mountain, pressing down with such weight that it could scarcely breathe. Forced to retreat, it recoiled toward the bottom of the well, seeking another path of escape. Following the flow of the water, it crept toward the main hall. This was the heart of the residence, the place where the ancestors were venerated. The hanging ghost emerged from the pool of water within the main hall. A rope-like figure attempted to ascend, but immediately triggered the mechanism of the feng shui formation. 4 stone tortoises began to draw an essence, pinning it firmly in place. The tortoise and the ghost share a phonetic similarity, and while the tortoise signifies longevity and peace where water gathers, so too do blessings, longevity, and prosperity. 4 waters returning to the hall is a profound configuration of feng shui. Its original purpose is to receive celestial blessings, longevity, and wealth. Now it is bolstered by the pure vase held in the mouth of the northern tortoise. The tortoise of the north is none other than the black tortoise, Xuanwu. The pure vase in turn is a vessel for water. Guanyin once used it to contain the waters of the 4 seas, requiring a giant clam to support its weight. This is a convergence of both Buddhist and Taoist principles. In an instant, the bone-chilling, baleful yin energy radiating from the hanging ghost was drawn into the formation. The hanging ghost was overcome with terror and desperate to flee. The 4 tortoises formed a formation, creating an invisible barrier that rendered every attempt to escape futile. The main hall operated of its own accord, with the heavens above and the earth below, embodying the harmony of the universe, gathering the energy of the entire house, moving like a river yet standing firm as a mountain. The hanging ghost could neither advance nor retreat back into the darkness of the well. The baleful aura of the hanging ghost was incessantly neutralized, transmuting into the life force of the four waters returning to the hall formation. This life force flowed along the feng shui currents, ultimately concentrating at the Chen Palace. In my room, I felt the life force converging, bringing with it the vitality of all things flourishing. I immediately began to attempt the restoration of the life force within my 5 organs. I utilized the supreme longevity technique of the Orthodox Taoist school, the art of guided respiration and tortoise breathing. The tortoise breathing technique is a form of slumber cultivation. Practicing this method involves imitating the hibernation of a tortoise. Therefore, there is no need for seated meditation. One need only lie on their side, ensuring the convergence of the energies of the heart and kidneys. Thus, with steady, deep inhalations and exhalations, suspended in a state between wakefulness and slumber, I nurtured my essence and preserved my spirit. Furthermore, the tortoise method corresponds to profound stillness, making it highly suitable for sensing the body's internal energy flow. Only by sensing the energy within the body can one cultivate it and allow it to flourish. As I gradually circulated this energy, I relied on the feng shui formation to accelerate the healing of my physical form. Inhale, exhale, I quickly grasped the secret of the technique. My mind became attuned solely to the rhythm of my breath. Sensing the flow of internal energy circulating throughout my body, I could hear the steady rhythm of my heart and the movement of my life force. The vital energy nourishing my internal organs placed me in a state between wakefulness and slumber, akin to a profound deep sleep. My organs purged impurities, damaged functions restored themselves, and my mind found true rest. While I was cultivating this vital energy, the Liu household was thrown into utter chaos. Lutong had followed my advice, seeking a secluded location to establish a shrine for the fox immortal. However, the Liu estate was teeming with activity. There was no corner that could be considered remote. Consequently, Lu Tongtong decided to purchase a private residence. Such a purchase was no small matter, requiring hundreds of taels of silver. This endeavor inevitably alerted Mother Lu. She cared for little else, fearing only that her son was squandering money on gambling and debauchery. Upon hearing the news, she immediately summoned a group of sturdy matrons, confined Lu Tongtong to the house, and forbade him from leaving. The fatty attempted to scale the wall while no one was watching, but he twisted his ankle, let out a miserable wail, and was promptly dragged back inside. Unable to contain his frustration, Lu Tongtong sobbed and pleaded with Madame Lu, claiming he merely wanted a quiet home to study, so that he might one day achieve academic success. Having raised him from birth, how could Mother Lu not know that he could barely read a single word? She refused to believe him, instead imagining a scandalous secret affair, which only hardened her resolve to withhold the money and keep him under lock and key, vowing to wait for his father to return and settle the matter. Lu Tongtong could only swallow his anger with a sigh, his expression utterly dejected. Erzu, seeing that Lu Tongtong had twisted his ankle, began to massage it to improve circulation and reduce the swelling, asking, "Young master, what exactly are you planning? Why are you so insistent on buying a house?" Lu Tongtong replied with a pained expression, "I have been granted an immortal affinity, and I must find a secluded place to offer my worship. It is a pity that my mother, a woman who lacks such insight, keeps me confined here. If this is not accomplished, my immortal destiny will be squandered." Erzu listened, not daring to ask what kind of immortal destiny he spoke of, and after a moment of thought he suggested, "Why not use my old house? My father has passed away, and the house has sat vacant, as I am now working here in your estate. It is a humble mud brick house in the countryside located in a very remote area. It has been quite some time since anyone lived there, and I rarely visit. I fear it has become overgrown with weeds." Lu Tongtong's eyes brightened upon hearing this, and he exclaimed, "Erju, that is excellent. You have always been loyal. A secluded place where no one dwells is exactly what I need." The two devised a small ruse to slip out once more, heading. The residents of Zuo Erjuju sat in a secluded corner of the Lu estate backed by a small hill and shrouded by a massive tree standing before its entrance. Because of this large tree, the gate was misaligned according to the principles of feng shui. This is considered a grave taboo. This is precisely what is meant by the path of heterodox and malevolent arts. The mountain behind is not a stable formation. In the event of heavy rain, a landslide would surely compromise the foundation. In terms of feng shui, this location is unfit for the residence of the living, and indeed equally unsuitable for the burial of the dead. Furthermore, the mountain blocks the light from behind, and the large tree at the front obstructs both illumination and the path forward. It is ill-omened in every respect. Upon entering, Lu Tongtong felt a shiver run down his spine. The air was gloomy and cold, and the small courtyard was damp, carpeted in overgrown ferns. Erjuju cleared a path and unlocked the door. A gust of wind immediately surged from within. It was equally chilling, and though the interior was largely orderly, it had clearly been neglected for a long time, heavy with the scent of dust and mildew. Lu Tongtong stepped inside on his tiptoes to inspect the dim space, where the fading light revealed only a small table and a few chairs. Beyond the central hall lay the backyard. The backyard pressed directly against the hillside, where a small section had been carved out to serve as a makeshift kitchen with firewood piled high to the side. A patch of untended vegetable garden occupied the side of the house. It was, in truth, sufficiently remote and quiet. Huju murmured, "My father was a diligent man. He found this plot of land that no one wanted to build our home. My mother passed early. He raised me alone until he finally succumbed to exhaustion." Erjuju continued, "Before my father passed, he took me to plead with the master of the house. The benevolent master took pity and kept me on. Days after my father died, the relatives stripped the house of all its belongings and divided the fields, leaving only this shack. The master stepped in to ensure I kept it, saying it would be my home when I took a wife one day. Urjuju, I never imagined your circumstances were so tragic. You truly resemble the protagonists of those storybooks. Zua Urjuju, from this day forward, if I have a piece of meat to eat, you shall have a bowl of soup to drink. Follow me, and you will not suffer. Lu Tongtong remarked with deep emotion. Thereafter the two began to clean and rearrange the space. The dining table was placed before the central hall and covered with a red cloth, while a scroll of white paper was hung straight against the wall. As I had instructed, he wrote position of the Master of Affairs at the top, followed by Hu Sen below it. Beneath Hu Sen, he inscribed the names Tu Hu Budong and Hu De Lu. Next was the consecration of the Immortal's abode. To invite the Hu Immortal's spiritual manifestation, one must first consecrate the incense burner. All of these requirements had already been imparted to him. Lu Tongtong performed each step with precision, bowing to the four directions to invite the four spirits, beseeching the local earth deity, and finally calling upon the various immortals and spirits. Once the rites were concluded, Lu Tongtong was uncertain if he had truly succeeded, but he had followed the instructions to the letter. Upon departing, he affixed a red paper to the door recording the year, month, and day that the disciple Lu Tongtong welcomed the Hu Immortal into this hall. This place was already marked with a seal of no entry for unauthorized personnel, clearly indicating it had been prepared as a fortified outpost. Yet it had been seized by some unknown entity. After completing this task, the two left the area. Once the energy flow was restored, the ancient crooked tree immediately felt the response, joyfully clawing at its trunk and dancing a peculiar jig in excitement. It commanded its kin to gather their belongings, declaring that they were moving and would no longer dwell in this foul-smelling, gloomy, and dilapidated place. The foxes asked, "Where is this new home, and is it large enough for all of us?" Hu Jin could not answer, only stating that it would go to investigate the conditions first. "I shall return to inform you all." With that, it transformed into an elderly woman clad in black robes. Following the directions, it arrived at the old residence of Suo Erju. Seeing that the house was nestled against the mountainside, it was immensely satisfied. Excellent. The little ones will have the mountains to play in. Upon closer inspection, the large tree in front of the house pleased it even more. We used to live by the ancient crooked tree, and here there is another great tree. A large tree can refine spiritual energy, provide shelter for our kind, and attract crows. It is truly wonderful to have magpies nesting here as well. It noticed the red talisman seal and read the characters inscribed upon it twice. Confirming that it was an invitation to take up residence, it happily revealed its fox fangs and tore the paper down to keep as proof. Stepping into the courtyard, it noted that while there were many weeds to a fox, this was not a drawback but a distinct advantage. Crossing the courtyard into the central hall, though it was dim and hazy, everything remained visible. Upon seeing the immortal registry, Hu Jin bowed respectfully, kowtowed, and offered incense. Disciple Hu Jin pays respects to the Dharma Master Li Sugong. After kowtowing, it separated a strand of consciousness and attached it to the two characters Hu Jin written upon the registry. As this consciousness entered the text, its perspective began to shift. It became apparent that once the altar and incense burner were set up, this house was considered a consecrated Dharma site. This divine registry served as a gateway into the Dharma realm of the site. Within the realm of the registry, the presence of Dharma Master Li Sugong shone like a sun, illuminating the entire space. It could vaguely perceive that this appeared to be a temple thriving with incense and offerings. Although this space was not vast, being roughly the size of the house itself, it could shift according to one's intent. With a thought, a garden filled with lush grass appeared. With another, various furnishings manifested, though the effort left its spirit feeling exceptionally drained. After experimenting for a while, Hu Jin realized with shock what this space truly was. I can rely on this immortal registry to enter the Dharma realm of this house and garden. It is akin to the nether-dwelling one inhabits after death. No, this is a Dharma site, or more accurately a blessed cave abode. So what exactly lies beyond the threshold of the Dharma realm? Hu Jin pushed open the gates of the courtyard within the Dharma realm. In an instant, a freezing gale swept through, lashing against her face with stinging force. Outside lay a desolate and somber landscape, dominated by a pitch-black ancient tree so massive it would take dozens of men to encircle its trunk. Its canopy stretched for miles like a vast umbrella, casting an even deeper darkness over the mountains looming in the distance. The scenery extended all the way to the forest of wailing ghosts. Hu Jin intended to step further out, but she suddenly noticed pairs of crimson eyes appearing in the distance, radiating malice and insatiable hunger fixated upon the gate that had just swung open. They stared directly into Hu Jin's eyes, closing the distance in what seemed like a mere heartbeat. The owners of these eyes moved with supernatural swiftness, nearing her with each passing second. Startled, Hu Jin retreated behind the gate and bolted it shut. From that eerie perspective, the gate had appeared and vanished in the blink of an eye. The area beyond was indeed a Dharma realm. Hu Jin had inherited knowledge from her predecessors regarding the sites of the yin spirit roaming these realms, and it was exactly as cold and ghastly as she had witnessed. The Dharma realm is not the underworld. It is a manifestation constructed from the perceptions of sentient beings, a projection of consciousness. Thus, those who worship gods and Buddhas will find them dwelling within the Dharma realm. Those who fear ghosts and demons will find such entities burgeoning within the Dharma realm as well. Consequently, the obsessions and grievances within the Dharma realm can coalesce into its own living beings. Cultivating within the Dharma realm involves a perception of time vastly different from that of the physical world. After all, the speed of thought is boundless. For instance, in the physical world bound by a mortal body, one must read a book page by page, and even then, retention is not guaranteed. Yet, within the Dharma realm, one need only glance at the text to commit it to memory. Once the mind's focus is solidified, those memories remain even after returning to the physical form. Hujin finally realized the immense value of the divine technique she had been taught. It appeared that once the arrangements were complete, this residence would become a sanctuary within the Dharma realm, functioning as a mystical temple, a sanctuary for cultivation, or the dwelling of a great demon. For her, it was far more than just a mere shelter. It was a place that prohibited unauthorized intruders, allowing her to cultivate wisdom within the Dharma realm in peace, a place to refine her Taoist path. Overwhelmed with excitement and at a loss for words, they shall remain forever loyal to me. After lingering a while longer in the courtyard of the immortal Fox Hall within the Dharma realm, Hujin finally departed and returned to the side of the mass grave mound. Beneath the twisted ancient tree, he shared this auspicious news with the Fox Pack. That place is a dwelling fit for immortals, he proclaimed. The foxes gathered beneath the twisted tree, lifting their heads to listen, their hearts filled with immense anticipation as Hujin described their new home. One by one, they began to pack their belongings, though in truth there was little to collect, mostly tattered garments and worn-out caps. Foxes often wore human clothing and donned human hats, frequently asking their companions, "Do I look like a human?" They would feign a standing posture, mimicking the gait of passers-by. They also cherished discarded children's toys, old books, and copper coins, refusing to throw anything away, carefully bundling every scrap to take with them. By nightfall, the 4 foxes that had attained sentience transformed into human form. 2 walked in front and 2 behind, carrying the bundles, while in the middle the smaller foxes that had not yet gained sentience, about 7 or 8 of them, marched in a line. Thus, they began their migration away from the base of the twisted ancient tree. Although the fox den beneath the tree was nothing extraordinary, Hudu Shu could not bear to leave it so easily, and with great effort, he found a stone to block the entrance. Thinking that they might one day return, Hujin shouted, "You have blocked the door. What are the others of our kin to do if they wish to move in later? Show some consideration for our fellow kind." In the end, he only partially covered the cave entrance before they set off toward the immortal Fox Hall, which Lu Tongtong had established at the home of Zhu. Hujin tore the red paper in his hand and declared, "Only when they arrive safely at the village will there be peace." Upon entering the secluded house at the edge of the village, a place these foxes had never before inhabited, they began to scamper and roll about in excitement. Hujin summoned Hu Duxiu, instructing them to kowtow before their master Li Shigong and to imprint their intentions upon the registry of the immortal Fox Hall. And so the foxes that had attained sentience entered the Dharma realm, astonished by the wondrous sights where all things manifested according to one's thoughts. Where is this place? Truly, this is the dwelling of an immortal. One transformed a flower into existence, another conjured a blade of grass. Yet because their willpower was not yet refined, the things they created could not be sustained for long. This was unlike Hu Jin, who had been enlightened and possessed nearly 100 years of cultivation. His wisdom was far superior, comparable to that of an ordinary human. Hu Jin stopped them from further play and began to lay down the rules. "We have attained this great fortune today solely thanks to Master Shu. However, you must not go out and speak recklessly of these matters, especially to our kin like Hua Gui. Should you cause trouble, I will not wait for Master Shu to speak. I will personally wring your necks and skin you alive." Hudu Shu, Hudalu, and Hubutong were so terrified they jumped in shock. The most cruel punishment for a fox is to be skinned alive. Should a fox that has attained sentience betray its own kind, the result is clear. They would be left only to watch as an iron hook pierces their neck, suspended from a rack, and their hide torn from them while they still draw breath. The fox had not yet perished. If not for a swift, lethal strike, it would have been left to wail in agony for half an incense stick's time. Even as the pain pushed it toward death, its body would continue to convulse violently. The other foxes watched this scene, filled with both terror and helplessness. Beside the hunter, 7 or 8 hounds stood ready. Furthermore, they were unfazed by the fox spirit's mystical arts. These were mountain hunting hounds, bred specifically to suppress the demons and spirits of these peaks. Hu Jin, using this to intimidate them, was already the most potent threat imaginable. Seeing them trembling with fear, Hu Jin softened his tone. "Only a few of us possess enough cultivation to maintain human form and venture outside. But your Taoist cultivation is insufficient, making you vulnerable to being scented by the hounds. Should they take a bite of you, I fear you would be forced to reveal your true forms. Therefore, strive to remain indoors. When idle, tend to the vegetable garden behind the house. In the future, you may even sell the produce at the early market. Moreover, the situation deep in the back mountains must be clearly investigated. Those who have yet to gain sentience are to be settled in the safe caverns at the rear. Do not dwell among us. Most importantly, you are strictly forbidden from opening the gates of our protective boundary. Our strength remains meager and the outside world is perilous. Some wandering spirit might even seize the opportunity to force its way in. If this place were to be exposed, would we not lose all standing? Do you hear me clearly?" "We hear you clearly." Only then was Hu Jin at ease, turning his focus towards establishing communication with Liu Tongtong at the temple. Once Hu Jin's consciousness entered the Taoist realm within the register, he discovered a spiritual thread connecting him to Liu Tongtong. This served as proof that Lu Tongtong had become his designated disciple. Through this thread, Hu Jin could cast dream-weaving arts from afar, conveying messages to Lu Tongtong through the power of his supernatural arts, or even directly manifesting his consciousness to possess his form. Lu Tongtong was asleep, and in his dream he was locked in combat with an old demon. Old demon, I shall plunge a white blade into you, and it shall emerge stained red. I shall pierce your heart and liver with a white blade, and it shall emerge stained green. I shall strike your withered gallbladder with a white blade, and it shall emerge stained yellow. I shall strike your waste-filled gut. As the battle raged on, the old demon suddenly vanished, replaced by a colossal fox. This fox possessed fur of a brilliant fiery red with a golden mark on its brow. Its expression was benevolent and serene, carrying a divine beauty. Young Master Lu, I am Hu Jin, whom you encountered last night. Thank you for constructing a shrine to honor and worship our clan. From this day forward, I shall serve you with all my heart. Together, we shall contemplate the great Tao. Lu Tongtong regained his composure instantly. That is easily done. I have already knelt before Brother Li to acknowledge him as my master. Since Brother Li has stated that you are a protector under his command, we are all part of the same family. That is truly wonderful news. In that case, may I address you as senior brother Xiao Hu? That would not be entirely appropriate. Lu Tongtong is my sworn brother. In regards to me, you should address yourself as a disciple. Hu Jin then interjected, do not dwell on such matters. Let us simply treat each other as family. Now I shall explain to you how you may borrow my dharmic power and arts. If you require my power, you need only place a spark of fire upon your forehead, hold an incense stick in your hand, and silently recite my name 3 times. However, your physical health is quite frail. You will only be able to borrow the equivalent of 1 year of my bitter cultivation, and the energy will be exhausted after casting 1 or 2 spells. Regarding the arts, I possess 5 techniques that you may utilize. The first is the ghost-driving art, which allows one to command wandering spirits, though it cannot control malevolent ghosts. This technique can resolve most common issues. Even if one cannot expel an evil spirit, one can at least communicate with them. The second is the eye-clouding art. This is an illusion technique, a minor spell that merely acts as a veil for the eyes rather than truly concealing physical objects. It hides one's form from sight, but it is only effective against ordinary mortals. The third is the disease-expelling incantation. This Dharma gate can treat certain ailments, but it is best paired with medicinal herbs to achieve true efficacy. I use it most frequently to alleviate pain and staunch bleeding for my juniors. The fourth is a divination art, which can only cast basic hexagrams. I can rely on my innate sense of danger to judge fortunes, though it is not guaranteed to be precise. The fifth is the enchantment art, which can control the hearts of men, but if broken, it will result in a backlash. You must never use this upon the wicked. For these 5 arts, you need only silently chant to borrow my power and select which to cast. As for possession, my master has forbidden me from doing so at will, as it causes great damage to the physical vessel. However, should an extremely urgent situation arise, you need only cry out, "Fox Immortal, save me," and I shall be able to possess your body. Once finished speaking, the enormous fox moved toward the distance, gradually shrinking until it vanished from sight. Upon waking early the next morning, my spirit and vitality were fully restored. This was due in part to the successful entry into the breath-regulating technique, and also because the vital energy gathered, proving as nourishing as consuming a whole stewed hen. After rinsing my mouth, I ate 2 bowls of meat porridge and asked Xiao Hong with a smile, "Do not be afraid, did you sleep well last night?" "Young master, I do not know why. Though I felt a bit restless in the early hours of the night, I soon drifted into a deep and peaceful slumber, and woke up feeling incredibly refreshed this morning. I have partitioned a room away from that old woman for you. It will naturally be much quieter. From now on, focus solely on serving me. You may ignore any requests for help from the other old servants." "Many thanks, young master." Xiao Hong beamed with joy. "Has the lamb been purchased yet?" "The young master has already spoken to the matriarch. She has invited physician Li over today, and we must wait for him to check your pulse before deciding. After all, a lamb is not inexpensive, unlike a chicken or a duck. If you raise those, you get 20 or 30 caddies of meat, whereas a young lamb only yields about 10 caddies. I nodded. Physician Li arrived early in the morning to check my pulse, and he found it truly strange. The young master's body is recovering remarkably well, as if he has been resting and recuperating for over a fortnight. Before, your pulse was as fragile as a silkworm thread. Now, although it remains slow, it is no longer weak, possessing the steady rhythm of a healthy elder. It is vastly improved compared to before. The matriarch then presented my lamb meat soup recipe to the physician for his review. "How is this prescription formulated?" The physician frowned. "Why do you ask me to examine someone else's prescription? Every healer has their own methods, and every school of thought differs. How am I to judge this?" But when he saw it was not a medicinal prescription, but a restorative tonic recipe, his eyes widened in surprise. "This recipe is brilliant. It warms and nourishes the blood and qi, fortifies the yang energy, and strengthens the essence and origin. A family of lesser means could never afford such a regimen. It reads as if it were passed down through a prominent lineage. Can my son consume this?" "Naturally, he can. Even you and the master may partake regularly. However, it should be avoided once the weather turns hot. It is best consumed during the cold season. Of course, given the young master's frailty and his body's tendency to run cold during the summer, he may continue to use such tonics. May I be so bold as to ask where this recipe originated so that I might transcribe it? Shall I take this home to study it thoroughly? Copy it down. I happen to find it in an ancient text. If it can be used to save a life, its existence will not have been in vain. The physician asked again, "Might I inquire as to which ancient text this is? Would you allow me a glimpse?" I smiled without a word. The physician understood. My silence was a refusal, he added. "Forgive my abruptness. Wait a few more days, and I shall return to check the young master's pulse." Because the physician was familiar with my condition, Lady Lee escorted him out to inquire further. "Physician, what was it that you observed earlier? Could you explain it to me in greater detail? Why did you suggest that we summon a Taoist priest and a monk to inspect the situation?" Physician Lee remained tight-lipped. He shook his head and replied, "There are matters that even I do not fully comprehend. It is merely that among the monks and Taoists, many possess unique talents. Perhaps there is a glimmer of hope. I meant nothing more than that. Do not overthink it, my lady." Having said this, he took his leave and departed. Once I had finished checking the pulse, I went to the main hall of Mingtong to examine the changes in the feng shui. I looked up to see that the skywell above the gourd was already frequented by many birds. This was because living creatures naturally gravitate toward places saturated with vital energy. The water in the basin began to circulate on its own, transforming into living water. Only a single gaze of malice remained within, suppressed by the feng shui formation which incessantly neutralized its killing intent. It was being converted into vital energy. I had calculated that a calamity awaited me, yet while this carving exuded a piercing murderous aura, its spiritual consciousness was not profound. I had transformed its killing intent into vitality, which in turn began to nourish the surrounding life force. This indicated that the mastermind had yet to arrive, and my impending calamity had not yet been fully averted. The greatest variables in this lifetime of mine are the soul of the original vessel and the Taoist who pried open my coffin. How could a single entity be described as a gathering of yin spirits? The war eagles have been dispatched to gather their intelligence, but the fox spirits and the secret agents cannot afford to remain idle either. I must rapidly elevate my strength. I left that place and entered the study of the Lee estate. Lion was inside reading, and upon seeing me, her expression brightened with joy. "Do not push yourself too hard. You should rest when you need to. I wish to understand the worldview of this era, so I must read extensively. Otherwise, discrepancies in historical knowledge will cause much trouble. Reading in my spare time is also a way to pass the hours. I cannot spend the entire day simply lying in bed." After speaking, Leon picked up a volume of the Great Ning Encyclopedia and began to read. The benefit of a powerful soul is the ability to remember everything after reading it once, but the downside is a susceptibility to hypertension. Once the brain is overworked, the temples begin to throb, pulsing with every beat. One also becomes prone to bouts of dizziness. Because I possess eidetic memory, the speed at which I flip through books is immense. This drew the attention of Li Fu. He observed that I hadn't even spent half a quarter hour reading a book before setting it down and pulling out another. He thought to himself, "Isn't he here to read this book? Why does he keep turning the pages so rapidly? Even someone skimming through it could not possibly be this fast." The second book I picked up was a collection of ancient and modern literature. The essays from the pre-Qin era contained nothing out of the ordinary. After the founding of the dynasty, there were many authors and literary works I did not recognize. But that matters not. I simply committed them all to memory and would sort them out later. After scanning through it, I placed the second book back. I picked up the third. A common reader would essentially have no access to historical texts. I could not hope to grasp the true history from Li Fu's collection. After all, only the extremely wealthy families could afford the luxury of studying history. If one is determined to study history, they must either borrow from those with vast libraries or seek out renowned masters to lecture them. In his youth, Li Fu was devoted to pursuing official rank. Most of the books here concern the craft of writing essays. They are essentially reference books, intended solely for the civil service examinations. He himself does not have a clear understanding of specific historical events. His concepts remain vague. Since he had never read the works of the literary masters post-Perkin, and I had no other choice, I opened the third book. The Yong'an prefecture scholar Wen Zhang looked at me and said, "You are arrogant and impractical. Why bother reading the works of these scholars? Turning pages so quickly, how much have you actually read? Is it because I spoke a word to you earlier that you are now putting on this pretense in front of me?" I did not even look up as I read, for the contents had already been etched into my mind. Li Fu suppressed his anger and retorted, "What a boastful attitude. I ask you, how would you develop the essay topic to subdue oneself and return to propriety is perfect virtue?" I smiled. I had already begun searching through my mind. Without needing to alter the premise, one simply needs to transcribe. To subdue oneself and return to propriety is to cultivate internal virtue, and to manifest it externally. The requirement of abstinence for those who study the Fu script is not merely to suppress desire, but to elevate personal ambition into a pursuit of righteousness. This topic is strictly framed, yet its implications are profound, striking directly at the heart of the matter. However, I have already studied the text in my own room, and just now I reviewed the reference books from the Shu residence. Combined with a century of experience from my past life, and having read my fair share of Confucian classics, integrating all of this, I can only say that the time to showcase my abilities has arrived. I know the Li Patriarch harbors suspicions toward me, but if I can fulfill his wishes by securing an official rank, or helping his heir achieve such a rank, all doubts will be dispelled, for this is a matter of tangible interest. This official rank is also the glory of the Li family genealogy. Naturally, I could choose to depart from this house. Wandering the world in solitary cultivation is an option, but that is not my nature. Furthermore, to leave now would be to abandon a debt of karma. Upon hearing my answer, the Li Patriarch's tone softened. Not bad. While it may not be a monumental improvement, you have not forgotten what you were taught. Passing the Shukai examination should be certain, but do not become arrogant. Do not flaunt your intelligence, for only by being practical can you travel further. You have possessed a talent for scholarship since you were young, but you must cultivate that talent. You must exert even greater effort. Otherwise, if you waste your brilliance, it will be difficult to achieve anything of note. In my study, I have a collection of essays and commentaries copied from the capital by various Jinshi scholars. Although the topics from the special imperial examination 3 years ago are no longer in vogue, one does not read these essays for their content, but for their structural essence. It is enough for you to contemplate. If you are interested, I shall bring them to you tomorrow. I have no taste for this droning didactic lecture. Perhaps it is because I see reflections of my own past life, where I often enjoyed lecturing others. Yet, I did not expect a mere scholar's household to possess a collection of works by Jinshi scholars. This is truly an interesting surprise. It appears the printing industry in this world is quite developed. There goes one potential method of earning money. Personally, I have no desire for official status, but passing the Jurin examination is necessary for my identity and reputation. The status of a Jurin will better facilitate my pursuit of the Tao. Furthermore, a Jurin is not strictly obligated to serve as an official. Unless one chooses to contribute, possessing the status alone is enough, allowing one to move through the county seat without hindrance. As long as one does not intentionally oppose the magistrate's office, any minor grievances or entanglements can be resolved immediately the moment one speaks up. A Jurin can also expand various enterprises, a privilege not afforded to a mere shuk. My path of cultivation requires an endless stream of wealth. I must prepare for that early. Whether I succeeded in the imperial examinations myself or helped Father Li succeed, either path would provide sufficient support for Xiao Hao in the initial stages of his cultivation. Regardless, achieving success in the examinations is an investment that yields 10,000 times the profit. It seemed that Father Li's lecture showed no signs of stopping. Thus, after finishing the book, I interrupted him. Father, aside from the 200 mu of fertile land we rent out, what other sources of income do we have, and are we still involved in usury? Father Li was momentarily stunned by the interruption. He had been preparing to deliver a long-winded speech, intending to use the adage without peace in one's small home, how can one accomplish a great career? To encourage me to study harder, hoping I would one day transform into a dragon, and finally see me pass the provincial examination. You finished reading the book? He asked, frowning. Why do you ask about these matters? I have never asked before, but now that I have fallen ill, recovering my health requires a significant amount of silver. Naturally, I must inquire. If we are eating through our wealth, we must practice frugality. If we are still stable, then we must quickly nourish my body with high-quality medicinal herbs. Your grandfather was quite wealthy in his time, but after suffering a great loss, he sold off nearly everything, even parting with his merchant ships, retaining only this house and the family's farmland. When your mother married into our family, she brought a dowry of 10 mu of mulberry fields. According to the ledgers from previous years, the rent alone from those fertile fields yields about 100 taels of silver annually. In a good harvest year, it is slightly more. In a bad year, it might drop to 80-something taels, but one must account for the wages of the servants and the nannies. The holiday tributes to the county magistrate's office, the family's living expenses, and the costs of social obligations consume nearly the rest. After economizing on our spending each year, we only manage to save about 20 or 30 taels of silver. Those 10 mu of mulberry fields can sustain 10 batches of silkworms, producing silk cocoons twice a year. If there are no unforeseen mishaps, we can produce 200 or 300 jin of silk. Mother and the maids process this raw silk into brocade, yielding roughly 50 to 60 bolts, which can earn another 30 or 40 taels of silver. Hearing this, only one thought crossed my mind. Even a landlord's household does not have much to spare. I looked at our residence, which was so massive that it covered 2 or 3 mu of land and had previously assumed we were quite prosperous. Father Li did not interpret my concern for these affairs as a lack of focus on my studies. After all, if one cannot manage their own household, how can one hope to manage the world? Managing a family is much like managing a nation. Although saving 50 taels of silver a year is considered a substantial sum when calculated carefully, it is clear that we do not have much surplus. The expenses for my father and me to study, purchase brushes and ink, pay tuition fees, and acquire the occasional rare book are significant. Every time a new textbook was released, even without purchasing the volumes themselves, the cost of hiring a scribe to copy them was a significant expense, one even greater than the budget for my clothing. I fell into an even deeper silence. After calculating the figures repeatedly, I realized we could barely break even each year, with a high risk of slipping into a financial deficit. That detestable Master Huang, did he not claim that by reincarnating into a wealthy family, I would have sufficient resources to support the initial stages of my cultivation? Was I to perform my cultivation in a house that was declining, forced to sell off our land? Father Li observed the disappointment, perhaps even the disgust, clearly etched upon my face. His temple twitched slightly, and before he could help himself, he spoke. Naturally, your grandfather left behind a modest sum of savings from his days as a merchant. My eyes brightened, and I immediately demanded to know how much there was. Father Li instantly regretted his words. He had intended to keep it a secret, fearing that even if one does not fear a thief, one must worry about their own son's greed. But since the question was asked, he had no choice but to lead me to see it. After taking a deep, steadying breath, he stood up and gestured, "Follow me," leading me toward the rear of the house. The back of the house contained a small room converted into an outhouse, housing a large wooden vat. Father Lee shifted the wooden vat, revealing a hidden trapdoor concealed beneath the floorboards. Father Lee led me down into the darkness, fumbling about until he located two chests, one large, one small. He opened the chests and ignited a flint, the flame instantly illuminating the entire space. The large chest was filled with silver, the smaller with gold. They shimmered and glowed, casting a brilliant luster across the room. "This is the wealth your grandfather left behind," he said. "There are 2,000 taels of silver and 100 taels of gold. The gold consists of 5 tael ingots, each molded in the shape of a dragon, while the silver is comprised of 20 tael ingots, totaling 100 pieces. Furthermore, the title deeds to our property and land are kept here. Consider this a full disclosure of our family's heritage." Father explained that my grandfather had originally intended for this wealth to be used to secure a minor, influential government post for me once I attained the rank of Jurin. However, the opportunity never arose and the funds remained untouched. I have the same intention now. Once you pass the Jurin examination, these resources are yours to manage as you see fit. As for the medicine to nourish your constitution, your mother and I have our own private savings of 200 taels accumulated over the years. Unless you require rare ginseng and deer antler to be consumed like daily meals, these supplies should be more than enough to sustain you for a year or two with proper care. I thought to myself, a year or two, I will exhaust that entire fortune in a month or two just to show you. Still, having this family fortune to sustain me for a year or two was not an unpleasant prospect. I stared at the gold and silver, silently calculating how long it could truly last. I turned to my father and asked, "So do you intend to remain idle at home indefinitely? Do you have no—" Father Lee said, "I have given it much thought. If we were to invest in land, our wealth would surely multiply. However, the imperial court has strict regulations and the land market has already reached its limit. As for commerce, I do not possess the talent for it, and I fear losing everything we have. My only hope now is to fulfill your grandfather's dying wish, for you to succeed in the imperial examinations, attain the rank of scholar, and secure a promising future. It has been 5 years since your grandfather passed and 2 years since your grandmother departed. By next year, the mourning period will conclude, and both you and I shall sit for the examinations." Father Lee is only in his early 40s, in the prime of his life. Even if he were to test until the age of 60, he still has 5 attempts remaining. Hearing him speak this way, I knew immediately that these funds could not be touched for the time being. I secretly mused that no matter how one altered the feng shui of this house, it could never foster a scholar. If both of us abandon our livelihood to bury ourselves in books without any income, this family estate will eventually be squandered in a few short years. If that happens, how am I to cultivate and refine my golden core? Must I truly resort to disturbing the ancestral graves of the Li family to manipulate their official and literary fortune through the arts of yin and yang feng shui? I am proficient in yang feng shui and the arrangement of altars for the physical body. While my expertise in yin feng shui, the study of burial grounds is merely average. Even this average far surpasses that of most common feng shui masters. In truth, my past obsession with the immortal Tao prioritized the living. As long as one dwells in comfort, that is enough. I had little concern for the plight of descendants after my passing. In my past life, the focus on the present over the afterlife, combined with the constraints of that era, meant we could not simply exhume ancestral remains or relocate graves at will. Nor was it a decision that one person could make alone. Since it was of no use to me, I saw no reason to pursue such studies. Conversely, my disciples in my previous life were quite fascinated by these matters. They would frequently practice yang feng shui for the powerful and influential. They would evaluate yin burial sites to amass vast fortunes, only to spend them on the various treasures and offerings required for my cultivation. In those days, I established a Taoist sanctuary in San Francisco, USA. Everything used in its construction consisted of dismantled structures from the Ming Dynasty. Ming Dynasty murals were carefully relocated and restored. The hall was filled with Taoist steels, ancient classics, and artifacts inherited from various lineages. Once the arrangement was complete, I could even leave my physical form in a trance for 3 days at a time. Yet the spiritual landscape of Earth was chaotic. The United States in particular was rife with malevolent entities. With evil spirits running rampant, in order to open the sanctuary, I even followed the example of the heavenly masters of old, subduing the ancient ghosts of the 6 heavens and vanquishing demons to restore peace. I single-handedly maintained order in that region. Once the sanctuary in San Francisco was established, it did not fail my expectations. Though it was not a natural grotto heaven of abundant spiritual energy, it was a place where one could truly dwell in peace. While residing within that state, my vitality did not wane with age, and my wisdom conversely grew ever more complete. By then, I was nearly 100 years old and had successfully condensed my core, reaching a realm not inferior to that of Zhang Sanfeng. Though I was not as skilled in combat as Zhang Sanfeng, nor could I overcome the final trial of the heart's demonic illusions. Father Lee saw my contemplation and asked, "What is the matter? Does even the imperial examination weigh so heavily upon you?" I shook my head and left that place. To acquire wealth, one must still rely on circulation. Father Lee, seeing my unimpressed demeanor, felt somewhat indignant. "What do you mean by shaking your head? Are you implying that I will fail the examination, or that you will? Or do you find our family's assets too meager?" The two of us left the cellar. Father Lee replaced the bricks and moved the wooden barrel back to its original position. Having clearly understood the situation, a plan had already formed in my heart. I intended to construct a concrete plan for my future cultivation. First, I returned to my room, tapped and massaged my acupoints for a while, then held a slice of ginseng in my mouth before closing my eyes to nourish my spirit. Calling it nourishing the spirit was merely a pretext for digesting the books I had read. To pursue immortality beyond relying on the provision of others, one must rely primarily upon oneself. I kept my eyes closed for nearly half an hour, carefully chewing over and digesting the contents of the books within my mind. It was a pity there was no progress bar, otherwise I could have gauged my success with certainty. No sooner had I finished than Xiao Hong pushed the door open and entered. Young master, the master and mistress have said they will provide you with 2 taels of silver each month for your personal use. Xiao Hong was overjoyed, but I remained expressionless. 2 taels of silver were enough to cover a month's expenses for an ordinary family of 3 in this county, but in my eyes it was merely a drop in the ocean. After all, purchasing a fat goat for consumption alone would cost over a tael of silver. Seeing my lack of interest, Xiao Hong added, "The master said that expenses for food and medicine are not included in this. These 2 taels of silver are the young master's monthly pocket money." "I understand. Go and collect the money first, then go to the apothecary and buy me 2 taels of sour plums, 1 tael of white paper, and afterwards visit the spirit paper shop to purchase some candles, incense, and gold paper, then bring back a piece of red cloth 3 feet and 6 inches in length." Why would Xiao spend money on such things? Do not ask. I simply used my aura to remind Xiao Hong of the night she encountered the spirit, and she obediently went out to purchase the items. After Xiao Hong departed, Lu Tongtong arrived at the Li residence immediately after lunch, anxious to share his peculiar experiences with me. "Brother Li, that fox was truly massive, as large as an ox. Why was it so completely different from the old motley furred fox I saw before?" "That was a manifestation of the fox spirit's intent. In other words, the form it wished for you to perceive. Eventually, it will cultivate toward that very image. Its fur is of a pure hue with a golden streak upon its forehead. As for the immense stature, that was likely a dream-induced transformation stemming from your own subjective perception. Is that so?" Upon waking this morning and recalling the dream, it felt vivid, incredibly realistic. The magical arts of the Fox Immortal sect can also be cast with ease. Following your instructions, Brother Li, I purchased roast chicken, grilled fish, some fruits, and pastries, then traveled to the Fox Immortal Hall to offer them as tributes to the Fox Immortal. The Fox Spirit manifested to meet me. After we shared a meal, I stubbornly insisted on reading introductory texts for the children. They listened with great focus, but the task was a burden for me. The Fox Spirit even asked, "Brother Li, perhaps you should come and teach them yourself?" After reading for half an hour, I grew drowsy myself, so I merely stated I would return tomorrow and hurried here to see you, which was the only way I managed to escape. "But I have surely mastered this cultivation art, it cannot be false." The fatty boasted of his minor magical technique, repeating a simple optical illusion as if it were a parlor trick. I could not help but strike back. "Have you forgotten what you have actually mastered?" It is clear that this fox spirit had already achieved its cultivation, and only then did it proactively allow you to borrow its powers. Your own Taman sect manual has not even reached the entry level. If you cannot comprehend that all things in heaven and earth possess spirit, how can you claim to have achieved cultivation? If it were not lending you its powers, would you be capable of casting any magic at all? The cultivation method is a two-way street. If the fox spirit is powerful, it can guide you, and as you gain even a sliver of Taoist virtue, the fox spirit benefits in return. Currently, it is merely leading you, and the efficiency is abysmal. I have yet to truly master it. The fatty looked somewhat disheartened. Not at the Liu estate, but at the secondary pillar's residence. After hearing this, I pondered for a moment. This was actually acceptable, and perhaps even better for your purposes. Since there is a mountain behind it, I shall instruct someone to purchase the tools to perform a mountain invocation ritual. I will accompany you today to perform the ritual to invoke the mountain spirit, helping you enter the path and commune with the fox spirit. Dual cultivation and enlightenment together. The stout man scratched his head in confusion. What is a mountain invocation? Mountains possess spirits. They are called mountain ghosts, mountain spirits, or mountain deities. Invoking the mountain means calling upon its essence to resonate with your own spirit. It can serve as a spiritual initiation, bestowing upon you the secret manuals of the shamanistic path. A successful initiation will not only enhance your spiritual perception and intuition, but also deepen your comprehension of the natural world. However, since your location is merely a house and not a temple, the manifestation will be limited. If there were a shrine, even a small earth god temple, one could manifest a spiritual domain spanning hundreds of acres. The spiritual realm outside a cultivation cave can be dangerous, but I shall now teach you a technique for protective chanting. If the mountain invocation is successful, you must record the name of the mountain lord into the ancestral register. The strength of this technique lies in the shamanistic belief that all things possess a spirit. The mountains have mountain deities, and the rivers have river deities. Once the mountain is invoked, if a deity manifests, one can offer sacrifices. Creating a natural spirit where there is no spiritual energy, the stout man remained bewildered. I spoke softly. This technique is a forced growth method from the heterodox paths and remains a secret, forbidden art within shamanism. As spiritual sensitivity surges, you may begin to see ghosts and monsters or hear sounds previously imperceptible, leaving you susceptible to mental instability. However, with the protection of the Fox Immortal, you need not fear these side effects. Xiao Hong quickly returned with the supplies, and I instructed the stout man to hire a carriage to transport the goods. Lady Lee was initially reluctant to let me leave, but I countered, if I do not step outside, how will others know that I am still alive and well? Lady Lee relented, handing me a protective amulet she had prayed for and insisted I carry it with me. This protective amulet lacked even a flicker of spiritual light. It was merely a talisman for peace of mind. Upon leaving the house, I vaguely felt as though someone was watching me. Yet I had already made certain preparations in my heart, choosing not to speak of it so as not to cause unnecessary worry. Arriving at the house with Lu Tongtong, I was truly astonished by the layout. With such a massive tree blocking the entrance and the pathway crooked, this place lacks any foundation for righteous energy. How could anyone have thought to build a house here? Could it be that no one warned him of the consequences? In the art of feng shui, this layout is considered a heart-piercing evil, not only obstructing light and blocking the flow of yang energy but also fostering the stagnation of yin energy. The main entrance is the gateway for life force. Having it blocked by a giant tree causes this place to devour the fortune of the household. The tree itself is prone to forming an arboreal curse. It not only affects this household, but could even alter the entire feng shui of the village. I walked around to examine this tree. I asked Shahrzoo, since this is your home after all, how old is this tree? Do you know? Shahrzoo shook his head. I do not know. I estimate it must be at least 70 or 80 years old. The roots must have spread for 3 or 4 miles by now. The three of us walked through the crooked path and entered the courtyard. The canopy was like an umbrella covering the entire small courtyard. Sensing my arrival, the fox spirit had transformed into an old woman waiting in the courtyard. Disciple pays respects to Master Lee. I waved my hand and said, I have come to inspect your sect's hall. I had initially thought that if they followed my instructions, everything would be stable, but it currently looks less like an immortal's dwelling, and more like a chaotic den. Many thanks for your concern, Master Lee. We all feel quite well. There is nothing amiss. This place is secluded and safe, and there is a mountain behind us. We can flee there at any time. I nodded. I was observing from a human perspective, but from the viewpoint of a beast, it is entirely different. These foxes were originally cultivating the wild fox zen, so it is no surprise they would gather here. The fox spirit was still arranging bones and mud at the entrance, using them as a medium to set up an illusion to deceive the eyes of outsiders. The house serves merely as a spiritual anchor between her and me to form a karmic bond. Since Lu Tongtong is her disciple, she remains unaffected. Does the copper coin I gave you to stabilize your fate still remain? The fox spirit hurriedly took out a copper coin and cautiously handed it to me. I took the coin and said, I did not intend to take it back, but I have use for this coin. Put it away and let us enter the house. Inside the house, there was only one altar, displaying the tablet for the Fox Immortal Hall. As for the lineage of the Immortals, it only listed Master Lee as the patron and 4 foxes. It could be said that their following was quite sparse. One must know that in the immortal manifesting halls of the Northeast, there is no hall that does not have 20 or 30 immortals, and some places even worship hundreds of them. So, I said to Lu Tongtong, later you should record the Sparrow Spirit into the lineage as well. She is a Sparrow Spirit who stays by my side to help me gather information. Lu Tongtong nodded and asked, how should I record her into the lineage? I sat upon the main seat, inquiring about the tasks I had assigned them to determine if they had been diligent in their investigations. Ho Tin, I instructed you to track the whereabouts of that Taoist and to discern if any shaman or demon with true cultivation resided nearby. Have you reached any conclusions? Ho Tin stepped forward and spoke. Disciple has communicated through the birds to inquire with the local fauna. I have gathered some information, but as it remains unverified, I have not yet dared to report it to Master. Speak regardless. According to a fox, after leaving the graveyard, the Taoist headed directly toward the mountain. Noksun is a sacred site for cultivation in Noksun district, housing both a Taoist temple and a nunnery. The Taoist temple is the Sun Tzu temple, which venerates the mountain god, while the nunnery is known as the Dia Tang Nunnery. Given our humble status, we have only operated within the Tondine commune and have never ventured to Noksun, leaving us with few leads to follow. Furthermore, regarding the origins of that hanging ghost, we have discovered that she hanged herself 2 months ago in the small forest outside Litra village. At that time, the villagers pooled their resources to hire a Taoist from the Sunku Temple on Noksun Mountain to perform a ritual for her transcendence. I nodded at this mention of the Taoist. I commended them, noting that these 2 pieces of information were of great importance. Ho Tin let out a sigh of relief and continued, as for the other practitioners in the vicinity that Master ordered us to investigate, we have obtained a preliminary report, though it lacks sufficient detail. Within this region, there are 11 villages in total, each possessing its own shaman, yet most are mere charlatans. Those who truly possess authentic power do not number more than 1 hand. As for other spirits of our kind, I have identified 4, the tree demon, the pig demon, and the rat demon. The tree demon was originally a fighting cock raised by a wealthy family. After awakening its spiritual intelligence, it gouged out one of its former master's eyes. After escaping, it typically disguises itself as a common farmyard chicken to scavenge for food. Should it be discovered, it retaliates with violence. Having drawn blood and attained demonic form, it has laid claim to the Fong Ditch region. It reigns as a despot among a flock of wild chickens. This creature possesses reverse talons and a beak sharp as iron, making it a formidable adversary. Its former master even spent a fortune hiring 2 specialized hunters to capture it. Even 2 martial artists from the local school were unable to subdue it. Even the Fox Immortal considers it a dangerous entity. It is certainly not a creature to be trifled with. As for the pig demon, it was Every year, it would produce a litter of offspring. Having attained spiritual sentience, it intentionally sought to avoid exhausting its vital essence to breed further. However, it happened to overhear its master one night, discussing how it had grown old and planning to slaughter it for salt-cured meat. The following year, when they attempted to sell it, it tore through the stable door and fled. Among the demonic beasts residing within the chaotic stone pits, it possessed the most imposing physique. As for its age, I have communicated with it on several occasions. As for the Rat King, it is truly grotesque, primarily because the tails of the 5 rats are knotted together. The largest one perished from starvation. The remaining 4 devoured its flesh. From that point on, the Rat Pack hailed it as the Rat King. It typically dwells underground, adept at both transport and pestilence arts. Once, while a cultivator was plowing a field, it suddenly went berserk, goring the owner until his entrails spilled out before escaping into the depths of the 9 provinces. The Guang Mansion once dispatched experts to subdue it, but it managed to escape them as well. Upon hearing this, I pondered, aside from that old black boar with its docile nature, none of these creatures are benevolent. Naturally, the final decision rests with Master. If Master intends to reform them, I shook my head. I do not follow the Buddhist path of laying down the butcher's knife to immediately attain Buddhahood. Having said this, I inquired further regarding the matter. The sect branch has now been established. Now that you have accessed the Dharma realm, entering it is truly akin to discovering a transcendent immortal grotto. The Fox Immortal then described the scenery within the Dharma realm. I nodded. This is the primary benefit of establishing shrines and altars. In the Taoist sanctum, you can command spirit soldiers and generals to protect you as you explore the surrounding Dharma realm. To refine these spirit soldiers, one must collect the malevolent manifestations of the mountains and rivers, while imprinting your own wicked thoughts into them. By doing so, your own intentions become purified and your cultivation speed will increase significantly. Because these spirit soldiers are tethered to your wicked thoughts, they will share a profound connection with your mind. As your cultivation realm deepens, the spirit soldiers will become increasingly fierce and formidable, capable of assisting you in scouting the Dharma realm and transmitting intelligence. Upon hearing this, the Fox Immortal realized this was a formidable method for protecting one's Tao. I am deeply grateful for Master's instruction. If a mountain lacks a guardian deity, it easily invites malevolent spirits. This serves as the perfect opportunity to practice the spirit soldier technique. However, before that, I must perform a ritual to cleanse the malevolent energy and pacify the earth spirits. After all, this is a civilian residence with treacherous feng shui. It cannot withstand the malevolent aura of vengeful spirits. It is a pity that your virtue is insufficient. Your status is not yet elevated enough. You can only receive secret veneration from the spirits. You are not yet fit to receive public offerings and widespread worship. If nothing else, even having a small shrine or an altar would be far better than the current situation. It would save me from having to exhaust my own spirit by taking action personally. The Fox Immortal felt ashamed, bowing low. This disciple will strive to cultivate virtue. I nodded. There was no need to rush this matter. As you mentioned, if those so-called sorcerers and shamans are mostly charlatans playing at divinity, then you should go and give them a fright and demand they pay homage to you. By offering your aid to resolve their troubles, you can gather the merit of incense and prayer. For you, this is a viable shortcut for cultivation. It was something he had never considered before. Would that truly be permissible? According to the laws of the Underworld, aren't these sorcerers and shamans destined for hell once they pass away? Yet now, I am effectively saving them. The Fox Immortal nodded upon hearing this. Then tomorrow, this disciple shall attend to this matter properly. I directed these individuals, though none were elderly, because the ritual required summoning the spirit of the mountain. Knowing its true name was essential to complete the ceremony. I asked everyone present if the mountain behind us had a name. The Fox Immortal, having already made inquiries, replied, "This mountain is called Jiguetsi Mountain, named because it resembles a chicken's beak. With 3 ridges rising to a single peak, it is not particularly high, standing at roughly 30 to 40 zhang." I nodded. If a mountain has a name, it must possess a spirit. Since one only needs to call out to receive a response, this task will be far simpler to resolve. Nearby, Lu Tongtong had already followed my instructions and arranged the ritual altar. Ordinarily, an altar be used to pay homage to a deity, but here there was only a scroll of divine lineage, the origin of which was the temple from my previous life, the Li family ancestral temple. Therefore, to honor the deity was to honor myself. I bypassed that step, though the rite of cleansing the altar could not be omitted. I chose the profound water cleansing ritual, which is quite straightforward. First, I pointed at the ritual water, then circled the perimeter of the altar. As I sprinkled the ritual water, I formed the hand seals, raised the cup, and chanted the incantation of heaven and earth cleansing. Once the altar was purified, I inserted incense at the 4 corners, then soaked white paper in wine and infused it with cinnabar, before using a needle to draw a drop of blood from Lu Tongtong's fingertip. The Fox Immortal also proactively squeezed out a drop of his own blood. Once these materials were blended into ink, I began to chant the incantation. I began with the 3 cleansing mantras, cleansing the mouth, cleansing the heart, and cleansing the body. Before commencing, I did not forget to instruct Lu Tongtong and the Fox Immortal. I instructed the 2 of them to remember these steps clearly, so they would have a template to follow when establishing their altar. Once the incantations were recited, I had Lu Tongtong and the Fox spirits chant the praises of Master Li together. I stood beside them reciting the blessing incantations. As soon as I finished, I could clearly hear the two of them praying with utmost sincerity. They were even able to establish a resonance with the temple of their past and present lives. It was a pity that after several attempts, I still could not establish a stable connection. It seems the successful connection last time was merely a stroke of luck, allowing me to borrow their spiritual power. Unable to borrow that power, I furrowed my brow, dismissed the thought, and took up my brush to draw the talismans. Although I possess no spiritual power of my own, I can directly command the power residing within the fox spirit. Having it bow to me earlier was the necessary step to establish the link to my position as the master of the rite for Li Shigong. A light, harmonious, and righteous flickered into existence, perfectly aligning with my own essence. I recited the consecration mantra, then swept my brush across the paper with fluid, vigorous strokes. First, I drew the 5 elements and 5 directions peace talismans, representing the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise, then instructed Nok Ni Chu to assist with the ritual. After all, this house belongs to him, not Lu Tongtong. By using the identity of the master of the house to set the barrier, I could achieve the full effect of pacifying the spirits and anchoring the 5 directions. Uninvited demons and malevolent spirits would be unable to cross the threshold. When the time comes to perform the mountain summoning ritual, the malignant ghosts and killing intent dwelling within the mountain will be blocked, ensuring only the true mountain deity is summoned. Nok Ni Chu followed my instructions, bowing and offering incense to the 4 cardinal directions. While he performed the ritual, I chanted the incantation of earthly peace and the 4 symbols incantation as I paced around the perimeter of the house. One by one, I ignited the azure dragon peace talisman, the vermilion bird peace talisman, the white tiger peace talisman, and the black tortoise peace talisman, before burning the central earth talisman in the courtyard. In total, 5 talismans stood guard over the grounds. When the time comes to draw the talisman to summon the mountain deity for the mountain calling ritual, it will not be handled so casually. It will be a far more solemn affair. I performed the ritual footwork, forming the sword hand seal with my fingers, and faced the completed talisman to chant. Traversing the earth's ruins, spirits of the stars and the wilderness, hear my command. My body had not yet recovered enough to handle such taxing incantations, and my complexion paled further. After resting for a moment, I handed the mountain deity summoning talisman to Lu Tongtong. We will stay here tonight, and my upcoming tribulation will be triggered. Lu Tongtong showed no signs of fear. Not a shred of fear. Huxian, enter the Dharma realm and prepare to refine the bone soldiers. Follow my instructions, refine the baleful aura of the mountains and rivers to dissolve the lingering evil thoughts. The 3 of you, listen well. You must protect Huxian at all costs. Do not delay. My command was met with absolute obedience and reverence from them. I stepped across the ritual ground, forming a sword seal with my fingers. Lu Tongtong burned the mountain god summoning talisman while a lit incense stick was planted atop his head. I formed a sword seal, a decisive motion to eliminate the threat. Lu Tongtong shuddered, and the flames of vitality on both his shoulders were instantly extinguished. Because of this, he could suddenly perceive the chaotic scenery, where the Dharma realm and the mortal world overlapped. He was momentarily struck with awe and curiosity. Just as he began to look around, I shouted, "Do not lose your focus. Recite with me. I command the Linshan Dharma Lord to proclaim to the great Lin Mountain, to the mountain passes and the earth's voids. Hear my command, Lord of this domain, God of Kekwezi Mountain, where are you? Appear before the altar at once, delay and be annihilated. Disobey and perish, by the speed of this command act." In an instant, the mountain wind roared with the sound of rumbling thunder. Thousands of birds took flight in sudden restless agitation. There is no traditional mountain god on Kekwezi Mountain. However, wandering ghosts and vengeful spirits, demons, and monsters abound in this place, taking on many forms. My ritual was akin to poking a hornet's nest, drawing them all toward us at once. Dark, indistinct miasmas of unknown origin were slowly lured toward the site. A dense, unnatural fog suddenly enveloped the mountain. Within the mist, countless demonic shadows flickered, some like wild beasts, others resembling men. The dogs raised by the villagers at the foot of the mountain initially barked incessantly, but before long they began to tremble in terror. With their tails tucked between their legs, they fled for their lives. The ancestral halls in the village began to emit a crimson glow, connecting to the hearths of thousands of households. Thus, each house seemed to be bathed in a faint protective light. Kekwezi Mountain possesses no true mountain god. Therefore, these malevolent spirits believed that whoever answered the altar's summons and carried out the command, that person would become the mountain god of Kekwezi Mountain. Huxian calmed his heart, and within the sanctuary of the Dharma realm, he began to refine the baleful aura as I had instructed. However, what greeted me was a legion of spectral shadows circling the ancient tree, prowling around the house, yet unable to find an entrance. These phantoms took many forms. Some were beasts, some were human, others resembled gnarled vines, while some were nothing more than swirling voids of black mist. They stared incessantly at the house, their numbers swelling into the hundreds. Even though I had established the 4 symbols and 5 elements formation, and set up barriers to ensure these spirits could not breach the perimeter, their growing agitation was without a doubt a dire omen. What Lu Tongtong witnessed was even more harrowing, a blurred ethereal overlap between the spirit realm and reality. It was precisely this ambiguity that left far too much room for the imagination to run wild. Spectral oxen, swine, serpents, and even small wretched manifestations of cats, dogs, and chickens radiating a chilling, malevolent aura. I gazed upon them as well, and my senses sharpened, immediately detecting one among the spectral swine that stood apart from the rest. This spirit exuded a dark necrotic miasma. Its complexion was a sickly yellow, and it wore a hat reminiscent of a burial mound dressed in earth-toned robes. Between its brows lingered a thick, suffocating aura of malice, resentment, and poison. In the next moment, images flashed through my mind, the dormant memories of the original host awakening, resonating with my soul. This was the spirit of the original body now twisted into an yin specter. I immediately realized it was an earthbound yin spirit. The original host did not perish from a wandering soul. On the contrary, the soul remained trapped within the vessel, suppressed and imprisoned, forced to endure until the body was buried in a preordained location, only then drawing its final breath. The original host had been refined into an earth element spirit within the 5 elements malevolent ghosts. The 5 elements malevolent ghosts are forged by murdering individuals with specific destinies in 5 distinct ways. The previous guest was a wood element spirit. The original host, buried alive in the cemetery, was the yin earth element spirit. The 5 elements malevolent ghosts must be refined according to the cycle of mutual restraint. If the preceding one was a wood spirit, then wood restrains earth, earth restrains water, fire restrains metal, and metal restrains wood, completing the cycle. Therefore, it matters little which element the process began with. I do not know how many spirits the culprit has already successfully refined. If the full set of 5 has not been gathered, the 5 elements malevolent ghosts are not difficult to contend with. But if all 5 are complete, we are in grave trouble. The 5 elements malevolence is a profoundly vicious and lethal curse. Since all things in this world are comprised of the acquired 5 elements, including the human body and our dwellings, these 5 elements malevolent ghosts can possess any human at will. They strip away the victim's 5 elements essence. Those who fall prey to them cannot even become ghosts upon death. They are bound to their controller, reduced to mere ghost slaves. If each of these 5 spirits claims 4 victims, they will coalesce into the 5 elements ghost generals. The evil spirits will become the vessels. If each one claims 9 lives, they will ascend into the 5 elements lesser killing kings. By growing in this manner, they can eventually massacre an entire city, turning the world upside down and yin and yang chaotic to become the 5 directions ghost kings. Furthermore, the 5 elements killing ghosts can manipulate wealth, slipping into any residence at will, fearing no house protecting talismans. In my previous life, I encountered a wicked cultivator who refined the 5 elements ghosts. However, the laws in the central plains are extremely strict. Harming others is no simple feat, so he took advantage of the convenience offered by an orphanage. He harmed 5 children to refine them into the 5 elements ghost children. My disciple was the one who encountered them. Unable to defeat them, he had to request my intervention. I am a man of extensive learning. I knew this technique to be the yin mountain art, the wickedest of the wicked, the most evil of the evil. The only way to neutralize them is to use elements that do not belong to the postnatal 5 elements. Lightning does not fall within that scope, which is why it can suppress all ghosts of the 5 elements. The lightning method of the great Tao is truly fierce and peerless. By the time I cultivated the great heavenly cycle, I was already aged and no longer possessed a virgin body, making it impossible to cultivate the pure yang lightning method. Moreover, there is no high voltage electricity here now. Cultivating the lightning method requires at least the mastery of the small heavenly cycle to successfully manifest palm lightning. I suspect that the wicked cultivator has not yet completed the 5 elements slaughter. First, finding individuals with the appropriate destiny is not easy. Throughout our engagement, only the killing ghost of the metal element, the guest-killing star, has appeared. Furthermore, during my tribulation in Huayang, I easily repelled the guest-killing star. When it attempted to infiltrate my residence, I captured 3 of them in a jar. They could not escape. If he had already perfected the 5 elements killing ghosts, they would have been coming and going with ease by now. I traced the protective copper coin in my hand. This object is the crucial tool to suppress this ghost. But has that wicked cultivator not yet shown himself? No sooner had my voice faded than an even more terrifying surge of yin energy swept through the forest. A giant chicken beak, standing about 1 zhang tall, appeared outside the swarms of ghost pigs at Juizhou Mountain. The entity radiated yin-killing aura throughout its body, hopping incessantly, closing the distance to the foot of the mountain with every leap. It lacks a physical form. In truth, it is much like a ghost. Because the common folk believe this mountain resembles a large chicken beak, it has taken shape by gathering their focused intent. In reality, this so-called mountain god of Jiawei Mountain possesses no divine nature, but is essentially a demonic monstrosity. It is a manifestation of natural will and the collective perception of the people. Compared to other ghostly entities, it aligns most closely with the characteristics of a mountain god. I gazed upon it. The mere thought of it was enticing, yet a creature standing 10 feet tall bounding incessantly while in pursuit of a person remained deeply eerie and terrifying. The barrier of Entrack could not contain it. After all, what they called a small home was fundamentally incapable of housing such a behemoth. It stood before the altar motionless, seemingly devoid of conscious intent. Yet, I knew it was observing those in the courtyard. It was learning, evolving, and harboring its own curiosities. If it desired to crush anyone underfoot, it could do so with ease. This was the essence of shamanism. The innate spirituality of the myriad things and the nascent spirits possess no inherent concepts of good or evil, yet they are easily influenced by acquired moral perceptions. Therefore, it was not truly a mountain god yet, but merely the spirit of the mountain itself, possessing the potential to ascend to that divinity. Lu Tongtong was also paralyzed with fear, staring blankly until I struck him to snap him back to his senses. He then hurriedly followed my instructions, beginning to commune with the mountain god of Jikizi Mountain. Two of his yang fire flames had already extinguished, only the one atop his head flickered precariously. Fortunately, the Fox Immortal was there. With the bling of this Fox Immortal, he swiftly entered a state of natural resonance. As he perceived the massive chicken-beaked entity before him, the entirety of Jikizi Mountain's true landscape emerged within his mind. His own spiritual essence began to communicate with the spirit of the mountain. Until my ritual altar issued the command, this Jikizi mountain god could not be suppressed. If a pact could not be formed to complete the shamanistic deity-invoking ritual, I would be forced to initiate a contingency plan. Fortunately, the acquired consciousness of the Jikizi mountain spirit was naturally assimilated upon contact with Lu Tongtong, resulting in the formation of a pact. A Jikizi mark manifested Tongtong's body. The Jikizi mountain god also began to undergo a transformation, condensing into a hazy humanoid figure, essentially manifesting a human shell. I personally inscribed the divine title of the Jikizi mountain god into the godly register, placing it on equal footing with the Fox Immortal. The Jikizi mountain god felt this resonance, transforming into a faceless man. His hand brushed against the godly register before passing directly into it, entering the space of the Taoist sanctuary. The Fox Immortal, residing within the sanctuary's legal realm, suddenly beheld such a faceless man encroaching upon its domain. Before the creature steeped in killing intent could react, it followed my earlier command to extract the killing intent from the visitor, imbuing it with its own will, allowing the Jikizi mountain god to perceive the Fox Immortal's intent and acquire a beast-like nature. His features gradually coalesced, and he finally looked toward the master's position at the highest point, perhaps toward the divine throne of the Grandmaster, which shone like a miniature sun, the very source of the entire legal realm. He reached out to touch it, but it was already a world away. How could he possibly bridge that distance? Within the Dharmic realm, though the mountain god of Joezi Mountain had gradually acquired a personality from the flow of influence, and had gained a primal bestial nature from the immortals, it could not ascend to reach divine nature, otherwise known as divinity. However, I had already begun the ritual, bestowing a name upon it, regardless of whether it be Taoism, Buddhism, shamanism, or even the demonic cults of the Americas. The Shinto traditions of Joezi all adhere to the customs passed down from antiquity. That is to say, all demons, ghosts, monsters, and deities possess a true name. The true name is one of the primary sources of a deity's power. To possess a true name is to be able to command gods and demons alike. This mountain spirit could not simply be called the mountain god of Joezi Mountain forever. And for the indigenous Taoist tradition, every deity has a secret talismanic character. I combined the form of a mountain demon with a chicken beak to create such a character. This, then, is its true name. The top part consists of the U radical, the upper half of the character for thunder, representing the act of issuing a command, signifying that the heavens have bestowed this name upon you, taking its initial sound. The character for mountain is the lower half of the character for peak, representing its divine role as a terrestrial mountain god. Taking its second sound, it reflects its form, read with an angular tone. The chicken claw symbol adopts the combined sound of Weishui, forming a character of its own. Thus, this secret talismanic character, though a single glyph, contains two syllables. This is a specially created character, and likewise a specially created pronunciation. Having finished creating this character to represent my immortal decree, I immediately drew a talisman to summon the new mountain god. The mountain god of Joezi Mountain transformed into the primary authority presiding over the fate of this region. Then I shouted aloud, by the decree of the Lord of Lingshan, I bestow upon you this true name, Huafu Shanwei. Answer and live, fail to answer and be extinguished. Swiftly obey the law and command. Within the Dharmic realm, the mountain god of Joezi Mountain let out a cry, clearly having answered the call. No sooner had it responded, the next second a face without features began to coalesce. It actually bore a slight resemblance to me. With a human body, chicken claws, and dressed in black robes, its rigid expression suggested it had not yet adapted to its new form. In its hand it gripped a chicken claw, using it as a weapon. I, however, felt my spirit grow hollow. My head spun. It appeared the naming ceremony had been a success. Although a portion of my spiritual energy had been forcibly extracted, it had caused no damage to my life essence. Fighting back the discomfort, I removed the talisman from its place on the wall where the mountain spirit of Chicken Mountain was depicted, and using a brush, I inscribed 4 characters in cinnabar ink onto yellow paper before affixing it to the corresponding position. This was a method of hiding spiritual artifacts, a technique specifically used for consecrated portraits. Although this particular one lacked a true portrait, it was merely a lineage scroll of the sect detailing a title, it remained effective. I had forged and claimed its true name, granting me the authority to command it at will. The next second, it was summoned forth. It materialized into the outside world. This manifestation already possessed the bearing of a guardian deity, and having acquired its true name, it had gained sentience, a true self, and a true spirit. Having transcended the bounds of mere natural spirituality, it began to evolve toward the divine realm of personification. All ghosts and spirits held it in awe. While it might not yet possess divinity, the status of a natural spiritual deity is inherently superior to such wandering ghosts. Yet their caution was overshadowed by their ravenous greed. A ghost hound barked incessantly. Unable to restrain itself, it lunged to attack first, followed immediately by the rest of the spectral pack. True to the omen of all yin and one yang, I had no fear that this divine manifestation would fall. The immortal, having communicated with the primeval spirit, had been frozen solid by the yin malice it carried. The little fatty was currently recovering the two yang fire flames upon his shoulders, still utilizing the ritual of bowing and offering his life, and the divine manifestation possessed an overwhelming aura. With a swing of its chicken claw, it cleaved the ghost hound into several pieces, reducing it to a wisp of yin energy. The other malevolent spirits bit down upon it, yet it was as if they were gnawing against solid stone. With it having secured a kill, I issued my command. To capture the original spirit and soul to be refined into a yin-earth ghost, it darted forth like a shooting star, though it still retained its old habit of limping. Any malevolent force that dared to obstruct. Fundamentally, there was no one capable of contending with a primordial spirit forged from earth element malevolence. Having no intention to engage in combat, it immediately utilized an earth escape technique to flee. However, this was the domain of the divine general. In the next moment, it was seized firmly within the general's grasp. Protector son, take this divine entity back to the courtyard to await my orders. Even after being captured, the malicious spirit refused to remain submissive. It stared fixedly at me, emitting venomous growls, yet it was clear that it possessed no consciousness. I sighed heavily and retrieved the suppression coin. The earth spirit was instantly drawn into the coin, successfully subdued and sealed within. I wrapped the coin in a soul-calming talisman, then collapsed into my chair, exhausted. The preceding struggle was a high-intensity engagement. Invoking a deity and manifesting its power required the mobilization of both divine spirit and intent. My current physical vessel lacks the necessary vitality to keep up, manifesting the symptoms of one who cultivates spirit but ignores the body, the primary affliction of many practitioners. I placed a pre-prepared ginseng slice into my mouth, circulating my internal energy to soothe my spirit and stabilize my essence. It took nearly half an hour before I felt some measure of recovery. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, Lu Tongtong was curiously experimenting with his newfound mystical abilities. By utilizing the mountain deity's connection, I had helped him bypass the natural progression of growth. He was not only able to borrow several techniques from Hu Jin, but could now personally manifest the innate gifts bestowed by the mountain deity. The Force Decree had granted him two distinct innate divine abilities. The first is Spirit Manifestation, which grants him the yin-yang eyes coupled with the ability to inflict damage upon ethereal entities. The second is Gazing upon the mountain and observing Qi. He innately perceives the flow of terrestrial energy and can discern the aura of humans, demons, spirits, and even treasures. These two innate gifts are exceptionally practical, proving far more versatile than the 5 minor techniques Hu Jin had offered him to borrow. How do you feel? Seeing him enjoy himself, I spoke up. Now that your eyes perceive things previously hidden, does it cause you any distress? There is some slight influence, but it is nothing I cannot handle. Lu Tongtong said excitedly, does this mean I have successfully achieved cultivation? I nodded and replied, practice with it frequently, but you must learn to actively suppress your spiritual aura, or you will suffer a great drain on your physical vitality. You are now aware of the existence of these entities. If they discover that you can see and hear them, it could lead to significant trouble. The shamanic sect possesses a vast array of magical artifacts. Relying on your own intuition, you may attempt to craft your own. By channeling the power of Hu Jin or the mountain deity during the refining process, you will achieve miraculous results. I began to describe the commonly encountered magical artifacts, explaining that they are essentially combinations of talismans and incantations meant to guide one's power, and suggested he begin by carving a wooden mask of the mountain deity. A simple wooden fox mask once painted can serve as a conduit for offerings. These masks possess equal power, and they grant the wearer a greater degree of intellectual freedom. Divine bones can threaten spirits, and even wild beasts may carry one. At this moment, the soul of Hu Jin emerged from the divine scroll and returned to his physical body. A green-faced, sharp-toothed demon, a savage creature wielding a great blade, followed behind him, staring down the crowd with fierce arrogance. Not bad, this mountain deity of yours possesses decent power, I remarked. It is adept at searching the mountains and driving away wild beasts. Seeking out spirits not only creates illusions but can also lure in foxes. Now that we have subjugated the deity of this mountain, we may command its essence at will. Refining bones, manifesting bones, and storing bones, each has its own established procedure. Your cultivation base is not yet profound. You could likely maintain a squad of 12 bone soldiers, but this divine bone could allow you to command 50 or 60. It is only a question of whether the killing intent of this mountain is sufficient to refine so many soldiers. Next, you must refine these bone jars to collect the essence, placing them before the divine altar for offerings. On the first day of every month, a single drop of your blood dripped into the jar will suffice as an offering. I followed Hu Jin, explaining the intricacies of refining bone soldiers. Harvesting killing intent to refine bones is one method, but one could also capture the defeated spirits of ancient battlefields to refine them. These are more akin to ghostly soldiers, though Hu Jin lacks the strength to subjugate such fallen generals. By having them refine the bones, I effectively refine them myself, saving a great deal of effort. Besides, I had nothing but time. Once the discussion on bone refining concluded, I turned to Lu Tongtong to speak carefully about the commandments. The first precept is not to slaughter indiscriminately. This includes wandering ghosts and spirits, for they are already pitiful enough in their existence. To bully them or use them as test subjects for your arts is to abuse your strength. It must not be done. The second precept, never be confused or blinded by greed. Accept offerings from the impoverished but only collect wealth from the affluent. In truth, the principle is the same as the first. Do not engage in petty squabbles for the sake of pride. The third precept concerns those who, upon attaining power, delight in showing off. When emotions are magnified infinitely, it becomes easy to grow vexed by this person or that, and once malice takes root, one loses all sense of restraint. This is what is known as a demonic obsession. The deeper one practices their cultivation technique, the greater the trial. Fail to maintain your original intent, and you shall inevitably stray onto a ruinous path. If you break these three precepts, I will not need to reclaim your power. You will be more than capable of bringing disaster upon yourself. It is difficult to reach a favorable end. Today I impart these 3 commandments to you. Should you violate them, this guardian deity shall issue a warning. Steady your heart and mind, and keep these words deeply imprinted within your soul. These same warnings apply to the little foxes of the Hu clan. You are absolutely forbidden from committing acts of evil. Your path of cultivation is already fraught with hardship. Only by accumulating virtue can you hope to achieve the true fruits of your labor. In the past, I focused solely on raising their strength and had never offered such guidance. Now that the matter of the primordial spirit and soul is resolved, my mind is much lighter, so I have decided to make up for their lack of instruction. Having finished speaking, I closed my eyes and entered a state of breath control meditation to recover the spiritual energy I had just expended. Early the next morning, as the sky began to brighten, I returned to the Lee residence with a long yawn. Truly, one should not wander at night. Because I did not return all night, the entire Lee residence was in a state of frantic anxiety. I had gone out with Lu Tong Tong and had been gone for the entire night. Although it was claimed we had gone to the new residence, people had been sent to inquire. The 2 of them had not returned at all yesterday, and the Lu residence assumed Lu Tong Tong had stayed the night at the Shu residence before returning home. My father and mother in the Li residence had intended to reprimand me for staying out all night, but seeing the weariness on my face, they could not bear to do so, deciding instead to wait for me to speak. Upon returning home, I first placed the copper coin used to suppress and seal the primordial spirit beneath the feet of the Bodhisattva in the family shrine, and then went to bathe. After bathing, I drank some mutton congee, held a slice of ginseng in my mouth, and finally lay upon the bed to enter a state of deep restorative sleep until the hour of noon. Xiao Hong came to call for me. "Young master, shall you dine?" Ever since the last time I guided her in breaking through her calamity, she has held a measure of reverence for me, believing that I am capable of anything, and that I might even foresee the future. I awoke from my meditative state, realizing I had not returned to the residence the previous night. Has anything untoward occurred? The madam and the master did not sleep all night. They have already sent men to the new residence to search for you. I nodded, feeling a slight headache. I understand. I drank another bowl of mutton congee in my room. My body warmed significantly, and seeing that the sun was already out, I stood up to bask in its light, hoping to dispel the lingering chill. I lay on the reclining chair for half the day, my eyes drifting shut, the sweet taste of the ginseng still lingering on my tongue. Knock, knock, knock. The gatekeeper opened the small door to reveal a young Taoist, his expression as sour as if someone owed him a debt he had no intention of settling. He clutched a letter in his hand. It was an invitation from my master, addressed to Master Li of the Li residence. Sensing that something was amiss, I stood up and walked toward him immediately. "Master, who is this man?" The young Taoist seemed struck with fear as I approached him, retreating a few steps while remaining deathly silent, his eyes fixed intently on Master Li as he emerged from the house, accepting the invitation with visible trepidation. "Tell your master that I have received the invitation." I turned to look at Master Li, raising my voice. "Who exactly is this Taoist?" "May I examine this letter?" Master Li replied. "He is merely an old acquaintance of mine. I became friends with him back when I studied in the quietude of the Taoist temple." "Why must you concern yourself with this letter?" I interrupted Master Li, my tone turning frigid. "Is this the same Taoist who, when I died previously, wished to bury me in the mass grave? Why do you bring up such matters now? Do not speak of such ill-omened things." Madame Li stepped forward to smooth over the tension. I did not continue. After all, pressing the issue would appear as though I were interrogating them, yet in my heart, I already had the answer. What was the meaning behind this Taoist delivering an invitation in broad daylight? Was this a deliberate provocation directed at me? Furthermore, Master Li had maintained contact with him. The invitation itself suggested that Master Li had reached out to him first, prompting this reply. In other words, since my return, Master Li had been in communication with that Taoist. I turned away, ignoring the young Taoist, and said, "Father, Mother, I have always hoped that you two would stand by my side. To put it bluntly, I have already returned from the gates of death. That death was highly suspicious. Back then, it was clearly a calculated scheme, perhaps even a malicious framing. Having managed to return to life with such difficulty, I only seek to uncover the truth. I hold you both in high regard, but I hope you will not be led astray by outsiders. Otherwise, if it is a minor punishment, I shall endure it, but if it is a severe one, I shall take my leave. If you truly consider me a demonic entity, I shall depart this place. If you merely harbor doubts, you can ask me directly." Father Li grew increasingly flustered, holding the letter in his hands, unsure of what to do at this moment. That young Taoist shouted, "You demonic creature, you still dare to deceive these people. You have seized another's physical body. Do you really think you can keep it hidden?" I looked at him, then turned my gaze to Father Li and Mother Li. Neither of them dared to meet my eyes, so I remained silent for a moment, refusing to argue with them, and instead rebuked the young Taoist. Master, where are you hiding? If you have the courage, tell him to come and confront me face to face. These past 2 days you have sent malevolent spirits to harm others. Your methods are truly insidious. Now that your attempt to harm has failed, you resort to sowing discord and provocation. Your heart is truly vicious. I will not argue with you further. Go and tell your master that the earthbound spirit and the sculpture used for the ritual have already been subdued by me, and if he has the capability, he should come and find me himself. If he does not come to find me, I shall seek him out personally, so that we may settle this debt once and for all. Upon hearing this, the young Taoist could not contain his fear. Struck by the intensity of my gaze, the words choked in his throat. I shouted begone and flicked my sleeves, channeling a trace of the aura I had just begun to cultivate. Combined with the lingering pressure from subduing the divine spirit yesterday, it was enough to directly terrify the young Taoist, causing him to collapse to the ground before he scrambled to his feet and fled in a panic. Watching the miserable figure of the young Taoist retreat, I turned back to look at my parents with a calm gaze. Father, mother, what is written in that letter? Father Lee heaved a long sigh.